PM Modi and Emmanuel Macron. Now, France is a country that is known to be fairly mercurial in its foreign policy positions. It's quite independent. It's not like the US and UK are joined at the hip with each other. France has, by and large, held its own, and India and France have close ties.
No,
Dr. Tara, we'll come back to you. Just hold on. We have a live feed coming in from the G7 statements by the heads of state.
さらに気候変動に脆弱な国々への支援、食料安全保障、中小企業や女性への支援のために JICA による合計40億ドル規模の融資の枠を新たに設けます。本日は各国首脳のほか、世界有数の機関投資家や総合商社、国際開発金融機関の代表にもご参加いただきました。
with us still, and if you could continue, you were speaking about India and France's relations.
France, obviously, especially in defense, our relations are extremely good. France has fewer hassles about, things than, for example, the US does. And we've been having this very quiet cooperation without making a big hoo-ha about it. But I would urge you to also see that though the UK is, is joined at the hip, as you said, UK, France and Germany did do an outreach to end the war. So there is a common concern. It's just that it's not articulated.
Dr. Tara, just one more second. I apologize. We have Joe Biden speaking.
Thanks to all the public and private partners around this table, many more around the world, we've already begun to deliver. Together, we've initiated quality and sustainable infrastructure projects across Africa, Asia, and the Americas. And we're strengthening our shared climate security, health security, and food security, and economic security. All four are critical. We started to engage more private investors to better de-risk and leverage additional capital. And I see at least two from the United States here that are de-risking a lot. And I'm proud to announce that the United States has already mobilized more than $30 billion in investments to date. And we're just getting started. Together we have a lot of work to do to close the infrastructure gap and in low and middle income countries. And as we begin the next year, our partnership, we need to find new ways to maximize our investments. That's why moving forward, the United States will enhance our focus on investing in key economic corridors. In practice, that means making game-changing investments in regions that could lead to positive impacts across multiple sectors in multiple countries. We've already started working with our partners to make this happen. For example, in sub-Saharan Africa, the U.S. Development Finance Corporation is looking to invest in this first railway project on the continent. A rail line would extend from the western shores of Angola to the border of the DRC and Zambia, with the goal of ultimately reaching the Indian Ocean, connecting the continent east to west for the first time. This project would not only quickly promote trade and create jobs, over time, in my view, it will strengthen supply chains, incentivize investments in agriculture, and promote food security. And it's going to enable, in my view, us to better access clean energy and digital connectivity across the entire region, creating more security, more prosperity, more opportunities for generations to come. That's what our focus on the key economic corridors is all about, investing in near-term solutions that pay long-term dividends. It's not only in Africa. We're starting similar work in Costa Rica, Ecuador, Indonesia, and other places I won't bore you with now. And let me close with this. During the G7 meeting, we're addressing a range of issues: climate change, food security, gender inequality, economic resilience, digital connectivity, and global security. We're tracking these challenges together, and I think we're beginning to make some important progress. But if we don't move to do more to strengthen infrastructure in low and middle income countries, if we don't do more to help nations deliver opportunities and prosperity for their people, our impact is going to be limited. That's how critical this partnership is. That's how important our investments are. So today, as we begin the PGII's second year, let's all find ways to maximize our investment. Maximize it, because it will do a lot not only for that particular undertaking, but it has an impact across the entire regions, in my view. And to unlock even more public and private capital. And together, let's recommit to showing that democracies can deliver. Let me say it again. Democracies can deliver. We have to deliver to people around the world. I want to thank you all for your partnership and leadership in this vital issue. And now I'm going to turn it back to the Prime Minister. Thank you.
はい、ジョーありがとう。で、続きましてフォンデアライエン委員長にご発言をお願いいたします。
Thank you very much. A pleasure to see you here. Indeed, it has been described, PGII, an initiative of $600 billion, top quality infrastructure, where Europe is proud to contribute half of it. We want eyes-level partnership with the partner countries. We want to find.
So there we have Ursula von der Leyen also making her statement, but US President Joe Biden just spoke, and he spoke a lot about making investments in countries that are perhaps in the global south, middle and low income economies is what he said. And Dr. Tara, one notable aspect was that there was a hint of deleveraging from China, wasn't there, with what Joe Biden said about de-risking, and also the fact that the US intends to push infrastructure investments in Africa. What did you make of it?
I don't think it's any kind of a revolutionary change or anything of the sort. I mean, they've been promising these, there is a constant tug of war in terms of China's influence in Africa, the US trying to get ahead of that. They're pretty late in that. What I would like to see is who's going to pay the climate crisis debt. Where is that money coming from? What they've been promised and which has yet to be delivered. You want to change things. These are G7 are the richest countries, right? What is their delivery in terms of the crisis which we are facing now, in terms of the climate as well as the Ukraine war? Right now, you were talking about France. France, I think, has been, like you said, is one of the countries who's been trying to end the war and has been got a lot of criticism for that. I think even spoke to the Chinese president of China, and his statement in China was very badly received. If you remember, he said that it's time Europe took its own path towards security, and he got quite a blowback on that. But quietly, there is a lot of agreement that it's time Europe took its way and found its way to get its own security concerns addressed, which are not just tagging along with the US. It's not just cost to the South, we know. Cost to Europe, less clear, but it is there. And especially the smaller countries like Italy and Greece.
Absolutely. We are also, Dr. Tara, receiving visuals right now, which we'll just put up on the screen, because PM Modi has met with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. That is a photo that is now visible to our viewers. And he says that he had a wonderful conversation with Antonio Guterres in Hiroshima. We've seen how India has repeatedly called for reform in the United Nations. As recently as yesterday, in his interview, PM Modi had said that institutions that don't evolve don't get much done, or something of that like. Dr. Tara, how do you perceive this? India has a close rapport with the UN, but not close enough, clearly, isn't it?
Come on, the UN is an institution which reflects the reality of how many, the World War II. That is when, how many years ago, decades ago. So it's like this, what shall I say? It's like trying to fit a plug onto a pinpoint which doesn't match it at all. The world right now is different. You have to reform the UN for the UN to get anywhere to be taken seriously. Right now, who takes the UN seriously? It doesn't matter, especially on these two issues which we're talking of. In terms of, the Russia-Ukraine war, I keep bringing up because that's going to be a hot subject. And in terms of the global south, the concerns of the global south, where is the UN involved? So unless that takes place, sustainable development, the UN has got some excellent initiatives. And it's very important in India to get those initiatives going. But then again, that's something we will be pushing in our presidency this year. In the sustainable development is very key to the PM's vision of what, the whole thing about the acronym which has been put for the of one world, one humanity, working together. That is what we need to do, and that is what the UN is about. But it's not doing it. So unless you have reform, it's not enough just to mouth it. Everybody says yes, you should, you should have reform, and nobody does anything about it. It's going to be very difficult. So I think that needs some very targeted diplomacy, because this is going to be a key area where we have to push hard, because the world is changing. It has already changed and it is changing further.
So on one hand, in just the last couple of hours, we've seen PM Modi being greeted by Joe Biden, by Rishi Sunak. We've seen him hold a bilateral with, appear alongside Emmanuel Macron, and they're also holding a bilateral. Joko Widodo, far and wide countries from all across the world, now with the UN Security Secretary General as well. India is the largest, most populous country in the world, or largest in terms of population. It's also the largest democracy in the world. Does this not all reflect the fact that no institution, no grouping can sort of be without India at this moment, or at least no grouping that claims to be global, isn't it?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, because not just because we are the most populous country, that has its advantages, but because we're the fastest growing economy in a world which is really hit so badly by slow growth, by recession. Threatened recession is already there in Europe, in parts of UK also. We are still growing, so therefore you matter. But the thing is that whether, that is where, I'm so happy that we have this the backing of the South. It's not enough. You can't be alone in this world. You need to pick up the causes which will resonate with the global South. And that is precisely what this government is doing. And it so happens those causes are also our own specific concerns. So India is, by virtue of its economy, primarily, and because of the fact that it has it has maintained, I should say this, a very fine balancing act in foreign policy. Absolutely. It has neither gone too far this side, where it is extremely well done. I mean, I'm not prone to sort of praising the government a lot, but this is fantastic. On Ukraine, in terms of the debt, global debt, we are pushing for all these reforms. I would wish that we could push harder again on climate change, including in the initiatives that we are taking within the country, and make it an example of how to deal with climate change. But I hope that will come too.
Most definitely. We'll be staying tuned to further developments at the G7. Dr. Tara Kartha, continue to remain with us. For the moment, we are going to be slipping into a short break, but the Modi-Zelensky meeting cannot be far now. We'll be coming back with visuals of that, hopefully. The Day 2 of the G7 meeting in Hiroshima in Japan is on. PM Modi is meeting with global leaders. We'll get you more details of that.
Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these?
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions.
Right.
Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की. ठीक है, मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, आप पूछने दीजिए. मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, पूछने दीजिए. मैं पूछता हूँ, बेरोजगारी की बात पूछने दीजिए. राहुल.
सर you are the सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं. आज जनता जानना चाहती है सर. सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं. आज जानना चाहती है जनता कि इतने लोगों की मौत हो गई है सर, लेकिन एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं है. सर एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं है. सर FIR सर आज राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री है, इतने लोगों की डेथ हो गई है सर, लेकिन कोई जवाब नहीं है सर। अब तक एक्शन को लेकर भी कुछ नहीं किया गया सर।
The army from Khorasan, which is from Afghanistan, will come before the end of time. They will attack India, and they will be the best among the mankind.
So basically, he wanted to attack India.
Basically,
so he said that to you.
The biggest actions of the movements, we've killed 2,700 police officers of various rank, chief minister, generals of the army. These are all targeted killings.
लालू जी, आपके शहाबुद्दीन से क्या रिश्ते हैं?
अरे तुम बराबर यही सवाल पूछते हो।
फोन पे आप बात करते हैं सर शहाबुद्दीन से?
यार फालतू करता गिरोगे यार। अरे छोड़ो,
बातें होती हैं जेल में।
कैसे बात होगी जेल से?
टेप आए थे टेप चला
तुम्हारे पास होगा टेप?
टेप है, वो चलाया।
चलाते रहो, हरि का भजन गाते रहो।
पत्रकारों को आपने गालियां,
बहुत बदतमीज है तुम्हारा रिपोर्ट।
आपने भी तो उनसे बदतमीजी करी।
फिर वही जवाब बोल रहा है, दे देंगे दुम का नाच के गिर जाओगे।
लालू जी,
आज टीवी बने हुए लोगों को अपील किया है कि आज टीवी का बाइकाट करो।
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know, those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.
Back-to-back bilateral meetings and mega engagements for Prime Minister Modi on sidelines of G7 summit. From meeting with Japanese Prime Minister to bonhomie with Biden, India's diplomacy on display in Hiroshima. All eyes on Prime Minister Modi's first in-person meeting with Zelensky after the Russia-Ukraine war. CBI files a charge sheet against Congress leader Jagdish Titler, mentions that Titler provoked a mob. Aam Aadmi Party calls Centre's ordinance on services unconstitutional. BJP hits back. TMC leader Abhishek Banerjee is being questioned by the CBI in connection with a job scam in Kolkata. And we're getting details of Prime Minister Modi's as well as G7 statement in connection with China at the G7 summit. In fact, a strong stance has been taken against China by the G7 grouping. G7 has opposed China's militarization in Asia Pacific, saying that it wants a stable China relations, a further warning on militarization of the Asia-Pacific region. A very, very strong message there coming in from the G7 leaders, just letting our viewers know about what has been said in this G7 meeting. The G7 has opposed China's militarization in Asia-Pacific. G7 has very clearly stated that they want stable China relations, have warned against militarization. G7 leaders also warned China over its militarization activities in the Asia-Pacific region, but said the bloc also wanted constructive and stable relations with Beijing. This message coming at a time when coming at a time of growing tensions between the West, especially US and China as well. These are some of the very key developments that have taken place. We'll have Abhishek also joining us on the phone line to give us more information about the statements that have been made at the G7 meeting. We will have Shravan as well, who will be joining us from the Delhi studios. Abhishek Kapoor is joining us on the phone line right now. Abhishek, if you can also give us details about Prime Minister Modi's statement there at session number 6 of the G7 summit.
Well, the Prime Minister has spoken about India's contribution to the ongoing global crisis on food, fertilizer and fuel security. He has spoken about how food security needs to be tackled bottoms up, taking care of the poor, taking care of the marginal farmer. He has spoken about inclusivism. He has said how women have equal stakes in India by way of reservation to the panchayat level. He has mentioned how India's president, the head of state, is a woman, and she is from the tribal communities. And Prime Minister spoke about taking inclusivism to a level where there are laws for transgenders in India, and Prime Minister specifically mentioned about the railway station which is fully manned by transgender community, and that essentially is what Prime Minister has said. He has asked for leveraging of technology to meet with the crisis. He has obliquely referenced on the politics of denial and obstruction that sometimes is practiced by the West. Insofar as fertilizer supplies are concerned, remember, gas is a very important component that goes into the making of fertilizer, and the kind of sanctions that are being put on Russia, that's really impeding or disrupting fertilizer supply, because you need gas for manufacture fertilizers. Also, we have seen proactive advanced buying by China of whatever fertilizer supplies are available in the world, and that's sort of creating an artificial scarcity, the hoarding that the Chinese are doing. Prime Minister has obliquely referenced that also in his opening comments that he made. So significant contribution being made by the Prime Minister. He has also said that the millets should be seen as going beyond fashion statement and integral to aspects like climate change, aspects like water distress, because millets are crops which can grow with less water and are healthier in terms of nutrition. They go beyond just food security. These are some of the aspects that Prime Minister has mentioned. He has also, of course, said that COVID provided new challenges to the cooperation and support systems that have been put in place by humanity till the time that the pandemic broke. And India provided a new dynamic in terms of vaccine and medicine supply. And he has said that these should not be connected again with any kind of politics. And holistic healthcare and health security should be the ultimate objective for humanity. So these are some of the contributing comments made by the Prime Minister. In fact, there is already a G7 statement, Sanika, which has come out, and this is called Hiroshima Leaders Communique. And this essentially talks about the world coming together to take care of the ongoing crisis. But this particularly, the statement is particularly strong on Ukraine. I don't know whether this really helps the cause, because it says, for example, that the West intends, the G7 intends to support Ukraine for as long as it takes in the face of Russia's illegal war of aggression. Now, this basically means that the war is not going to end anytime soon, because Russians obviously are not backing out after having traveled this far. So that insofar as the Europe war is concerned between Russia and Ukraine Ukraine fully backed by the West, the statement does not seem to be very promising because it sort of gives an idea that the West at least is going to dig it in. And apart from that, the statement talks about the launch of Hiroshima Action Statement for Resilient Global Food Security, about which, as I said, Prime Minister has mentioned in quite some detail in his opening comments. Apart from that, a big one is on China, where the statement clearly says that it supports a free and open Indo-Pacific and opposes any unilateral attempts to change status quo by force or coercion. That's a language which India would obviously agree with, given the fact that we have seen unilateral changes being brought about on the ground by the Chinese in Ladakh over the last couple of years. The statement also, of course, goes on to say that we intend to foster a strong and resilient global economic recovery, maintain financial stability, and promote jobs and sustainable growth. Again, these are statements of intent because the manner in which this whole artificial intelligence debate is panning out, we are actually facing massive job loss, and whether those aspects would come up or have come up in some sessions at least, that remains to be seen. But the G7 Hiroshima leaders communicate essentially saying that we, the leaders of Group of 7, met in Hiroshima for our annual summit on May 19th, 21st, more united than ever in our determination to meet the global challenges of this moment and set the course for a better future. Our work is rooted in respect for the Charter of the United Nations and International Partnership. No objection that, but as I said, that Eurocentric element where you sort of want to dig in your heels and persist and continue with the war. Perhaps the world was looking at some kind of way out, some kind of out-of-box thinking, some kind of reconciliation. There is still hope. Prime Minister Modi is meeting President Zelensky in a while from now. Hopefully something will come out of that as well.
Abhishek, as you get us the details of Prime Minister Modi's statement at G7, we're also getting these pictures from DD, which shows Prime Minister Modi had talks with the German Chancellor as well. Right now, we know that he's holding talks with French President Emmanuel Macron. Next will be the much-awaited talks with the Ukrainian President Zelensky. So, if you can also give our viewers a sense of the kind of engagements that Prime Minister Modi has and the agenda for the same.
Well, India has a very, very strong strategic partnership going with France, particularly on defense and security affairs. And so you can expect, that bit getting reflected. Also remember, in the month of July, which is 1.5 months from now, Prime Minister would be traveling to Paris to participate in the Bastille Day Parade, which is France's National Day, as a special invitee, like we invite foreign dignitaries on our Republic Day parade at the Kartavya Path. Now, earlier Rajpath, every year. This time, Prime Minister Modi is a special invitee, chief guest, in fact, of the Bastille Day parade on July 14th in Paris, France. And so, obviously, you can expect that when the bilateral talks are happening, that build up to those special moments when Prime Minister would be there with Emmanuel Macron, the chief guest of that Sunday parade, would be there. Even otherwise, we have seen the French very sympathetic, very appreciative of India's position on most of our security concerns, and Rafale fighter jets deal being just one component of the broader, larger collaboration and cooperation that is happening in the geostrategic space between India and France. So obviously, these pictures are testimony to the kind of warmth and a spirit of cooperation that now exists between India and France, Kanika.
Thank you very much, Abhishek, for giving us your perspective on the developments that are taking place in Hiroshima, the back-to-back bilateral meetings and engagements of the Prime Ministers there on the sidelines of G7 summit. We will continue to get these latest pictures and details of Prime Ministers' engagements there at the G7 summit. We're heading into a short break right now. After break, live updates continue, especially a build-up to Prime Minister Modi and Zelensky's meeting there in Hiroshima.
लालू जी, आपके शहाबुद्दीन से क्या रिश्ते हैं?
अरे तुम बराबर यही सवाल पूछते हो।
फोन पे आप बात करते हैं सर शहाबुद्दीन से?
अरे यार फालतू करता गिरोगे यार। अरे छोड़ो,
होती है जेल में।
कैसे बात होगी जेल से?
टेप आए थे टेप चला
तुम्हारे पास होगा टेप?
टेप है, वो चलाया भी।
चलाते रहो, हरि का भजन गाते रहो।
पत्रकारों को आपने गालियां दी।
बहुत बदतमीज है तुम्हारा रिपोर्ट।
आपने भी तो उनसे बदतमीजी करी।
फिर वही जवाब बोल रहा है, दे देंगे दुम का नाच के गिर जाओगे।
लालू जी,
आज टीवी बने हुए लोगों को अपील किया है कि आज टीवी का बाइकाट करो। ये भारत के लोगों की जीत है। वंदे वंदे। समझ में नहीं आ रहा, ये देखिए आप पूरा का पूरा टूट चुका है।
We have to leave from here. Due to the security reasons, we perhaps may not be able to reveal the location of the bunker where we were just a while back. These are the images which shows you the reality of what really happened in the city of Bucha. What you see right now on your screens is the reality of this war where thousands and thousands of Ukrainians have lost their lives. We are standing in the premise of a church right in the middle of Bucha, where we have seen bodies after bodies were being dumped inside these graveyards. These are the people that political soldiers.
Sir, he has been cooperating with the summons. Why have you arrested him in such a fashion?
Just to get out of this. Just to get out of this.
Indian Centre has filed the review petition, and Republic has accessed that review petition copy of the central government in connection with the services controversy. In fact, the central government has filed a review petition in the Supreme Court seeking it to reverse its order from May 11th in which the Supreme Court had given more powers to the state government, that is the Delhi government, in connection with the services. This comes just hours after an ordinance was brought in, reversing that decision, giving more powers to the Lieutenant Governor. We will have Rhythm joining us on the phone line to give us more details about the petition that has been filed by the central government. But just giving our viewers a sense of what has been mentioned in this petition that has been filed. The central government has stated that the petitioner, that is the central government, is filing a petition seeking review of the judgment and final order dated 11th May passed by the Honourable Court in Civil Appeal number 2357 of 2017. Contents of the review petition may kindly be read as part and parcel of this application, as the same are not being repeated herein for the sake of brevity. That the facts of the case are such that it gives a rise to issues of constitutional significance. The petitioner, that is the Union of India, seeks kind indulgence of this Honourable Court to permit it to place on record and address in open hearing various grounds for review, including but not confined to those stated in the review petition. We have Sambhav joining us on the phone line to give us more details about this review petition that has been filed by the central government in the Supreme Court. Sambhav, if you can elaborate on the grounds on which the central government has filed this review petition.
Well, this review petition has been filed by the centre in the Supreme Court regarding Supreme Court's earlier May 11 verdict in Delhi government versus LG matter. Well, in this petition in the Supreme Court, the centre is saying categorically that petition says judgment suffers from errors apparent on the face of the record and fails to consider the case submitted by the government. That's the main contention which is being put by the centre in the Supreme Court in this petition.
Thank you very much, Sambhav, for joining us on the phone and sharing these details with us. What is also taking place right now is a big political fight over this ordinance that has been brought in by the centre in connection with the officers, in connection with the appointment and transfer and postings of the officers. In fact, the central government are bringing in an ordinance on Friday, giving more powers to the Lieutenant Governor in connection with the transfer and posting of the officers. The move creating a big political fight. We're expecting the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal to hold a news briefing at 4 p.m. where he will be making his first statement on the ordinance. We are standing by for that statement. For now, we're heading into a short break. Also, after the break, stand by for Prime Minister Modi's meeting with Zelensky. This is going to be the first in-person meeting after the Russia-Ukraine war. Also coming up after the break, a charge sheet. CBI has filed a charge sheet against Jagdish Titler in connection with 1984 riots case.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for 10 years, with top 10 ranked institutions in management, engineering, biotech, law, masscom, telecom, hospitality, fashion and more. Yet another top ranking for Amity University.
Sachin, you tell me why you physically assaulted. These are the people who physically assaulted me.
Sir, he has been cooperating with the summons. Why have you arrested him in such fashion?
First to get out of this. First to get out of this.
Mr. Charles, what lies ahead? France will be safe for you.
Rahul, what do you have to say about the involvement of the shell companies, Rahul? Rahul, involvement of the shell companies, Rahul.
Was there an email that was sent to you from Shashi Tharoor asking for help?
Show me the mail.
He's asking for help, saying that forensic expert ko bhejo ye, asking that the independent forensic report has to be sent to the Home Minister, to the Health Minister.
चलो उसके बारे में कोई भी चर्चा ना है भारत की परिभाषा से मतलब सहमत है
Everybody has right to self-determine.
Mr. Stalin, what do you have to say on the recent death of Lance Naik Prabhu? Mr. Stalin, what do you have to say? Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these?
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions.
Right.
Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की ठीक है मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ आप पूछ
Siddaramaiah has taken oath as Karnataka's Chief Minister in a swearing-in ceremony at the Kantirava Stadium in Bengaluru. Karnataka Pradesh Congress Committee Chief D.K. Shivkumar has been sworn in as the Deputy Chief Minister. Both leaders, Siddaramaiah and D.K. Shivkumar, were administered oaths by Governor Thawarchand Gehlot. TMC National General Secretary Abhishek Banerjee was summoned to appear before the CBI at its Kolkata office in connection with the jobs scam. He has appeared before the CBI. His questioning started at 11 a.m. Abhishek Banerjee has decided to move the Supreme Court against the investigation that has been launched by the CBI in connection with the job scam. We're heading into a break right now. After the break, we'll get you details of the political fight over the ordinance that has been passed by the central government in connection with the transfer and posting of officers in the national capital.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for 10 years, with top 10 ranked institutions in management, engineering, biotech, law, masscom, telecom, hospitality, fashion and more. Yet another top ranking for Amity University.
Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these?
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की ठीक है मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ आप पूछने दीजिए मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ पूछने दीजिए मैं पूछता हूँ बेरोजगारी की बात पूछने दीजिए राहुल
सर यू आर द सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं आज जनता जानना चाहती है सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं आज जानना चाहती है जनता कि इतने लोगों की मौत हो गई है सर लेकिन एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं सर एफआईआर में सर आज राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री है इतने लोगों की डेथ हो गई है सर लेकिन कोई जवाब नहीं है सर अब तक एक्शन को लेकर भी कुछ नहीं किया गया सर
That the army from Khorasan, that is from Afghanistan, will come before the end of time, will attack India, and they will be the best among the mankind.
So basically he wanted to attack India.
Basically.
So he said that to you.
The biggest actions of the movements, we've killed 2,700 police officers and of various rank, chief minister, generals of the army. These are all targeted killings.
लालू जी आपके शहाबुद्दीन से क्या रिश्ते हैं?
अरे तुम बराबर यही सवाल पूछते हो
फोन पे आप बात करते हैं सर शहाबुद्दीन से?
यार करता गिरो गया अरे छोड़ो
बातें होती हैं जेल में
कैसे बात होगी जेल से
स्टे पे आए थे शहाबुद्दीन
On the sidelines of G7 summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveiled a statue of Mahatma Gandhi in Hiroshima. He said that the bust of Mahatma Gandhi will take forward the idea of non-violence.
आज विश्व क्लाइमेट और आतंकवाद की लड़ाई से जूझ रहा है। पूज्य बापू के आदर्श क्लाइमेट के साथ जो लड़ाई है उसे जीतने का उत्तम से उत्तम मार्ग है।
The unveiling of Gandhi statue in Hiroshima is significant as it carries a message of peace in the city where nearly 140,000 people were killed in a nuclear attack during the Second World War. Bureau Report for Republic TV.
Into a break right now. After the break, we'll get you details of the charge sheet that has been filed by the CBI against Congress leader Jagdish Taitla.
लालू जी, आपके शहाबुद्दीन से क्या रिश्ते हैं?
अरे तुम बराबर यही सवाल पूछते हो।
फोन पे आप बात करते हैं सर शहाबुद्दीन से?
अरे यार फालतू करता गिरोगे यार। अरे छोड़ो,
बातें होती है जेल में।
कैसे बात होगी जेल से?
टेप आए थे टेप चला
तुम्हारे पास होगा टेप?
टेप है, वो चलाया भी।
चलाते रहो, हरि का भजन गाते रहो।
पत्रकारों को आपने गालियां दी।
बहुत बदतमीज है तुम्हारा रिपोर्ट।
आपने भी तो उनसे बदतमीजी करी।
फिर वही जवाब बोल रहा है, दे देंगे दुम का नाच के गिर जाओगे।
लालू जी,
आज टीवी बने हुए लोगों को अपील किया है कि आज टीवी का बाइकाट करो। ये भारत के लोगों की जीत है। वंदे वंदे। समझ में नहीं आ रहा, ये देखिए आप पूरा का पूरा टूट चुका है।
We have to leave from here. Due to the security reasons, we perhaps may not be able to reveal the location of the bunker where we were just a while back. These are the images which shows you the reality of what really happened in the city of Bucha. What you see right now on your screens is the reality of this war where thousands and thousands of Ukrainians have lost their lives. We are standing in the premise of a church right in the middle of Bucha, where we have seen bodies after bodies were being dumped inside these graveyards.
These are the people who physically assaulted me.
Sir, he has been cooperating with the summons. Why have you arrested him in such a fashion?
Just to get out of this. Just to get out of this.
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dive right into the top stories on Superfast 50. Former Union Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad addressed a press briefing where he asked the Aam Aadmi Party why it was afraid of the ordinance promulgated by the centre government regarding the NCT appointments.
में काम करने वाले अफसरों के निर्णय के बारे में एक पारदर्शी और उत्तरदायी प्रक्रिया के लिए ये ऑर्डिनेंस लाया गया है. दिस ऑर्डिनेंस इज डिजाइन्ड टू इंश्योर greater accountability, transparency and dedication for upright officers.
Targeting the centre, Aam Aadmi Party Minister Atishi said that the Supreme Court said that the power rests with the elected government of Delhi and that except for three things, all the powers are with Arvind Kejriwal and that is democracy, which she said could not be tolerated by the central government.
8 साल की कानूनी लड़ाई के बाद जो हाई कोर्ट, सुप्रीम कोर्ट के दो संवैधानिक पीठों के आदेश के बाद 11 मई को सुप्रीम कोर्ट की कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बेंच ने कहा कि केंद्र की सरकार का आदेश गलत था. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि ताकत दिल्ली की चुनी हुई सरकार के पास है. जो ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट का आदेश था जो 11 मई को आया है, ये क्या कहता है? ये कहता है कि दिल्ली की चुनी हुई सरकार के पास ताकत क्यों है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि 3 संवैधानिक सिद्धांतों के आधार पर दिल्ली की चुनी हुई सरकार के पास ताकत है।
Taking a jibe at the BJP-led central government, Abhishek Manu Singhvi, who was a lawyer in the case for the Aam Aadmi Party-led Delhi government, said that the ordinance that the centre issued to overturn the Supreme Court's verdict in which it lost power over the NCT to the Delhi government is a bid to meddle with constitutional principles.
Any of these principles cannot be taken away by statute, by an ordinance. So what you've done is knowingly, you have done something unconstitutional. You have not removed the basis of the judgment because the basis of the judgment is a constitutional basis. You cannot remove a constitutional basis by statutory enactments. But what you have done is, as usual, mischievously, illegally bought time. You only purchased time. You are living on borrowed time. And I am sure justice will be done, whether it is done by striking down the ordinance, whether it is done by stay of the act or ordinance, or indeed whether Parliament at all will pass this into law. These are all the important issues.
The CBI has filed a charge sheet against Congress leader Jagdish Tytler in connection with the 1984 anti-Sikh riots case. Earlier in April, the CBI had collected voice samples of Jagdish Tytler. After multiple flip-flops and closure reports, the CBI has filed a charge sheet against Congress leader Jagdish Tytler in the 1984 anti-Sikh riots case. Fresh evidence has emerged against Tytler to establish the charge that he instigated the mob at Delhi's Pool Bangash Gurdwara, leading to the murder of 3 Sikhs on November the 1st, 1984. Responding to the RBI's rollback of 2,000 rupee notes, BJP leader Ravi Shankar Prasad said that the RBI is an autonomous and independent body and it is their prerogative to take such measures.
देखिए, इस पर रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया का फैसला है और रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया ने इस दिशा में बहुत ही विस्तृत नोट इशू किया है, जिसको आपने देखा होगा। क्या कहा है उन्होंने कि हमने 2016 में लाया था।
The Congress party launched an attack on PM Modi following the withdrawal of the 2,000 rupee notes by the RBI. The Congress says that this is a second demonetization disaster and that PM Modi first acts and then thinks.
Congress regime, UPA's government, which building you are talking about? If you are talking about roads, do you think your media, your channel thinks that we should not make roads for the people? You are comparing roads from this parliament building. It is unfortunate.
The PDP has said that the decision to call back 2,000 rupee notes is an endeavor to mislead the people from the country's core issue and make them fall in line again. Asaduddin Owaisi also questioned the RBI's decision and took to Twitter to raise his concerns over the rollback of the 2,000 rupee currency notes. He said 70 crore Indians don't have the prospect of making digital payments for the lack of affording smartphones. Union Minister Amit Shah reached Dwarkadish temple and offered his prayers. The Home Minister is in Gujarat for a 2-day visit where he will lay the foundation stone for the National Academy of Coastal Policing in Dwarka. Siddaramaiah has taken oath at Bengaluru's Kantirava Stadium as the 24th Chief Minister of Karnataka. Karnataka Pradesh Congress Committee Chief D.K. Shivkumar also took oath as the Deputy Chief Minister of Karnataka. Both D.K. Shivkumar and Siddaramaiah were administered oaths by Governor Thawarchand Gehlot at the Kantirava Stadium in Bengaluru. Trinamool leader Abhishek Banerjee was summoned to appear before the CBI at its Kolkata office on Saturday as part of the agency's probe into the school jobs scam. Banerjee, who was on the campaign trail in Bankura, had said that he was rushing back to Kolkata to answer the summons sent by the Central Investigative Agency and dared the CBI to arrest him. Following summons by the CBI to appear before its Kolkata office, Trinamool National General Secretary and Member of Parliament Abhishek Banerjee wrote to the agency informing that he has moved the Supreme Court for an urgent hearing challenging the Calcutta High Court order to quiz him in regards to the Kuntal Ghosh letter case. IRS officer and former zonal director of the Narcotics Control Bureau NCB, Sameer Wankhede, appeared before the CBI for questioning over his alleged extortion in the Aryan Khan drugs case. He was earlier granted a protective bail by the Bombay High Court on the grounds of attending said summons. The Congress-led Union Democratic Front, that is the UDF in Kerala, gheraued the Thiruvananthapuram Secretariat amid the CPIM's second anniversary of governance celebration under Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan. Alleging misgovernance, violence, corruption and inflation faced by the public, the UDF workers staged protests around the Secretariat premises, leading to traffic disruptions in various parts of the state capital. With less than a week to go before the G20 Tourism Working Group meetings in Jammu and Kashmir, the NIA and other security agencies have camped their protective action against terror. Multiple NIA raids were reportedly underway in the hinterland. Alert BSF troops intercepted another drone and shot it down in Punjab. The drone fell on the Pakistani side and could not be recovered. This is the third Pakistani drone that the BSF has intercepted in the last 2 days. Pakistan has notoriously been using drones to smuggle drugs and guns into Punjab and other regions along the border. Only a few days ahead of the G20 Tourism Working Group meetings in Kashmir, the Indian Army gunned down a terrorist in the Poonch sector. Arms, ammunition and narcotics were recovered in the operation. A massive fire broke out at a scrap warehouse facility in the Rajnagar area of Uttar Pradesh's Ghaziabad. Fire tenders were pressed into service. Fire services issued a statement saying that they doused the blaze and that no injuries or casualties occurred in the incident, thankfully. The second day of the G7 summit is underway in Hiroshima, Japan, where India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is meeting with the global leaders assembled there. PM Modi met his Japanese counterpart and host Fumio Kishida in Hiroshima and discussed ways to enhance the India-Japan friendship across different sectors, including trade, economy and culture. PM Modi is attending the G7 summit under the Japanese presidency at the invitation of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. During the ongoing G7 summit in Hiroshima, PM Modi met Indonesian President Joko Widodo as well as his wife. Announcing his meeting with the Indonesian leader, the Prime Minister wrote on his Twitter account that India attaches great priority to strong ties with Indonesia. Prime Minister Modi unveiled a bust of Mahatma Gandhi in Hiroshima. After the bust was unveiled, PM Modi played floral tributes to the father of our nation. The Prime Minister also shared a warm hug with US President Joe Biden as well as with UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as they each greeted each other in Hiroshima on the second day of the G7 summit. G7 leaders on Saturday warned China over its militarization activities in the Asia-Pacific region, but said that the bloc also wanted constructive and stable relations with Beijing. In a communique issued at the summit in Hiroshima, the nations laid out a raft of concerns about China's economic and military activities. The G7 leaders came together in Hiroshima to issue a joint statement reaffirming their commitment to achieving a world without nuclear weapons while ensuring security for all, according to a White House statement. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Japan for diplomatic talks with the leaders of the world's most powerful democracies as they tighten sanctions meant to punish Moscow over its 15-month invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has landed in Japan for talks with the G7 one day after the US endorsed a plan for Ukrainian pilots to train on American F-16 fighter jets. He arrived in Hiroshima tweeting that peace will become closer today ahead of talks with the leaders of the world's most powerful democracies. US President Joe Biden, along with G7 leaders, toured a 1400-year-old shrine in Hiroshima, Japan, the White House said. The 1400-year-old shrine is located, or rather is best known for its floating torii gates, which are well known in Japan. US Senator Tim Scott announced his candidacy for the 2024 US presidential elections, emerging as the latest opponent to Donald Trump. Former US President Barack Obama is among 500 Americans banned by Russia from entering the country in response to sanctions imposed by America. Greece's Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis promised to continue a policy of tough border controls at his final campaign rally in Athens. During his speech, the Greek PM said that Greece has air and land borders and both need to be protected. Tens of thousands of people gathered in Belgrade for a third time in a month to call for a crackdown on violence. Serbian government officials have been criticized for the way they have handled the aftermath of two recent deadly mass shootings. Some 700 people were evacuated from 4 small towns in western Spain owing to a wildfire fanned by strong winds that has razed some 8,000 hectares of land. Ecuador Central University students protested against President Guillermo Lasso's government. During the demonstration, the students blocked a main avenue and burned a doll depicting the country's leader. Students accused Lasso of escaping impeachment by dismantling the National Assembly. Zimbabwe has begun releasing over 4,000 prisoners under a presidential amnesty that authorities say will help ease congestion in some overcrowded jails. About 800 prisoners were released from Harare Central Prison. Former prisoners have in the past complained about overcrowding and other harsh conditions such as lack of food and proper health care. At least 19 inmates were left with minor injuries after a car ran into a red light, or rather crossed a red light and crashed into a bus in downtown Sacramento in California. Fire officials said there were 22 people on board the bus and 3 had to be taken to hospital. Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan stated that having a dialogue would be the best way to resolve the conflicts in Ukraine and in Syria. He made the remarks at a news briefing in Jeddah after an Arab League summit where Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was present and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also made a surprise visit. Colombians were on edge as a search continued for 4 indigenous children who might have survived a deadly plane crash in the Amazon rainforest 19 days ago. The accident occurred in the early hours. Moving to cricket and the IPL, the Punjab Kings are out. Rajasthan defeated Punjab by 4 wickets in match 66 of this year's tournament in Dharamshala. Chasing a target of 188 runs, the Rajasthan Royals managed to achieve it with 2 balls to spare. Chennai and Delhi will be squaring off in match 67 of the IPL 2023. CSK are second on the table with 15 points, while Delhi are down and out at 9th place with 10 points. Delhi's match against Chennai will be their last match of the IPL 2023 at their home stadium, the Arun Jaitley Stadium. Speaking ahead of the game, the Delhi assistant coach Shane Watson said that the team has a lot to play for in its final outing in Delhi. Rajasthan star batter Jos Buttler registered an unwanted batting record, becoming the player with the most ducks in a single season of the Indian Premier League. Rajasthan batter Yashasvi Jaiswal made history by becoming the uncapped player with the most runs in a single season of the Indian Premier League's history. In golf, there is a 3-way tie for the lead at the halfway stage of the PGA Championship in Rochester, New York. Scotty Scheffler, Victor Hovland and Corey Connors share the top spot. Real Madrid came from behind to beat Barcelona in the El Clasico of basketball as they booked a spot against Olympiacos in the EuroLeague Championships game. Champions Johor Darul Ta'zim registered their 11th consecutive win in the Malaysia Super League as they beat Kuching City 4-0 in Sarawak. That also meant that JDT are now on 33 points from 11 games. Angelina Kalinina toppled Veronika Kudermetova in a nearly 3-hour-long semi-final at the Italian Open. The 30th seed outlasted Kudermetova to reach her first singles final since 2021. And Olympiacos will contest the championship game in the EuroLeague after they swatted aside Monaco 76-62 in the Final Four. Viewers, we have breaking visuals coming in of Prime Minister Modi meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Hiroshima. This is the first physical official meeting that the two leaders have had since that fateful February last year when the Russian invasion of Ukraine began. Volodymyr Zelensky reached Hiroshima just a short while earlier, and one of his first meetings appears to be with PM Modi. Prime Minister has also met earlier today, just a couple of hours back, Joe Biden, Emmanuel Macron, Rishi Sunak, and now he is meeting Volodymyr Zelensky. We have photos also of the two, along with their delegations, sitting across from each other on a table and having what appear to be bilateral discussions. NSA Doval is also a part of this meeting. We'll be running those for you right now. But these are the first visuals of Modi meeting Zelensky. PM Modi has been a vocal proponent of re-establishing talks between Ukraine and Russia and resolving this conflict through conversation. And now this meeting between them is happening at the G7 in Japan, where, just like India, the Ukrainian head of state is also one of the leaders who is invited. There before you now are the delegation level talks that are ongoing between PM Modi and his delegation from our side, as well as the Ukrainian delegation led by Volodymyr Zelensky. They have met earlier, but that was before the war. That was before Zelensky turned into almost a war president, a war leader for his nation. There has been a complete change in how the world views Volodymyr Zelensky, and that is apparent in how his appearance has also now taken on a gruffer, more business-like demeanor. PM Modi sitting across from Zelensky. India is a country that has maintained good ties with virtually all of the major bloc nations. We have long relations with Russia, going back well into the Soviet Union's days. Good enough relations that PM Modi can sit across from the Russian president and tell him that it is not the era for war. And India has been dealing with Ukraine, another country with which it has long economic and cultural relations and people-to-people relations for many, many years, since it was founded out of the embers of the Soviet Union. And now the two leaders are meeting. They've held multiple conversations over the last year and a half over the phone. You'll all remember how when the war had initially broken out, there were a lot of Indian students, particularly medical students in Ukraine, and India had spoken to both sides and got both sides to agree to a brief ceasefire in order to allow evacuation. And I am confident there are a lot of other countries also that are happy for that having taken place, because they were granted some time to bring their citizens to the safer western areas of Ukraine from the central and eastern areas that were heavily under attack from the Russian side. The war is continuing. Zelensky is at the G7 to get more support. He's also got permission from the US now for Ukrainian fighter plane pilots to begin trials of the F-16. And to tell us more about this meeting is Shavan Sen, who is joining us, who has covered the Ukraine war extensively. Shavan, how do you read this meeting that has taken place after quite some time, but it's very significant, is it not?
Well, in fact, Ankit, one needs to view this from the Ukrainian perspective also. Why exactly Ukraine has essentially been pressing upon India's support? They realize that perhaps that's a window that they have in order to reach out to Russia. The public posturing that has been done by President Zelensky is that there is no question of having any dialogue with President Putin. But he also realizes that this war, if it continues the way it is only damaging not just Ukraine, but also damaging the future building prospects of the country. And that is exactly why you've seen just about a few days ago, about a couple of weeks ago, the first deputy foreign minister made a visit here in India. In fact, an invitation was then sent out to Prime Minister Modi to come and visit Ukraine. So they're certainly hoping that India would actually find a way out or perhaps mediate at some level or the other. In fact, as far as the Western media is concerned, the Western perspective is concerned on this entire matter, they have been looking at it from a very narrow perspective, that all of this is basically boiling down to India purchasing Russian oil. But the fact of the matter is that the same very oil that is purchased by India is finally being bought by the European nations, who essentially say that they put sanctions on Russia and it would basically, perhaps give them the high moral ground. Fact of the matter is that India has been doing some plain talking on this entire issue, where they say that, this is not an era of war. Remember that historic statement that was made by Prime Minister Modi when he met President Putin, something that was welcomed not just by Ukraine but almost every nation, saying that the way forward essentially being is that dialogue should actually take place. Now that's the position that India has actually taken. A short while back, G7 nations have actually urged China to also step in to try and convince President Putin to put an end to this war. In fact, also making that statement with regards to Taiwan. But on your screens right now, why this entire meeting becomes extremely significant? Because remember, for the global south, if the war basically continues, there are larger ramifications of it, especially in almost every country that you see. Every country is facing a tough time when it comes to the inflation rates. Also, more importantly, this leading to a lot of, having a lot of ripple effect as far as the job market is concerned. So all of this is interconnected in one way or the other. As far as national security is concerned, also remember there are security implications, especially given the fact that you've had Finland about a couple of weeks ago joining NATO, and the response that came in from Russia at that point in time, hoping that this entire expansionist policy is not only going to perhaps aggravate the situation. So certainly India plays a very, very crucial role in order to diffuse this entire matter, because prolonging this war has only benefited, I would say, the weapon manufacturers. And that is the reason why, while many say that is this some sort of a conspiracy theory, but it is not. It is a reality that many American thinkers would actually tell you that at the end of the day, this entire war economy that is basically thriving at this point in time, and it's a select few who basically benefit out of it. Of course, from the Ukrainian perspective, it's also about defending their territory. But some would say that the West has been egging Ukraine to such a point that there is no return to it. Because if you remember, when the war actually began, there were track 2 talks that were actually taking place. In fact, Russia and Ukrainian delegations were meeting in Belarus. But all of that has now fallen off track. You don't have any sort of negotiations that are actually taking place. One thing that Ukrainians do need to realize, or perhaps they do, but there is very little that can be done, can be worked on. That is, you can't wish away the fact that Russia is going to be your neighbor. And somewhere down the line, even Russia needs to accept the territorial integrity of Ukraine. And that's exactly why India has always been saying India's position on the territorial integrity, the territorial sovereignty is something that we have been extremely vocal about. This meeting that takes place between Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky perhaps would be looking at a roadmap right now as to what Ukraine can expect from India. Of course, if you see in the last couple of meetings that President Zelensky has had, he's been on a worldwide tour of European nations, drumming up that kind of support. They've essentially been looking at some sort of support coming in terms of weapon aid. United States now saying that F-16 would be made available to Ukraine. In fact, the pilots would actually be trained. And remember, that's a marked shift on their position too, as far as the United States of America is concerned, because with regards to F-16, US has been quite cagey, simply because they do not want the F-16s to fall into the hands of hostile nations, because there are secrets with regards to their weapon system. And more importantly, they did not want that to fall into hands of hostile nation. That is the reason why you've had that kind of communication that is taking place from the Ukrainians with the other European nations. Let me also quickly go across to our senior executive editor Abhishek Kapoor, who is joining us on this broadcast. And Abhishek, it's quite significant, the meeting that's actually taking place between Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky. what do you make of it? Because Ukrainians have always been looking for some sort of a support coming in from Indians. The fact that there was some criticism that they made when India was purchasing Russian oil, but that too seems to have now subdued because they realize the rationale behind it, because at the end of the day, the end consumer is not just Indians, but the end consumer of that same purchased oil is actually European nations.
You are absolutely right, Shravan. I think that realization has dawned that there was an element of hypocrisy in the European position when it came to India buying Russian oil, because quite some amount of whatever we have bought has been refined and shipped, so to say, to exactly these nations, which are sort of projecting a picture of a stringent anti-Russia position. But what is important is, Shravan, that this meeting is happening in the backdrop of a statement that has come out, the G7 leaders' communique, and the communique is not very conciliatory. It actually says that we will take it to the last battle, and we are going to stand with Ukraine and make sure that the war continues till Russia is defeated, or at least they would continue with their positions till the time Russia is defeated. Obviously, the Russians also are not going to pull back anytime soon, which means between the West and Russia, the war is not ending anytime soon. And in that context, this meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky gains salience because India has taken a very principled position that this war is not in anybody's interest, not in Europe's interest, even if the Europeans have been a little irresponsible. It is not in the interest of the rest of the world as well. So while we have seen one solution paper coming out from Chinese, but it's heavily tilting towards Russia, even as Prime Minister Modi has always maintained that dialogue should be given precedence and war should be stopped immediately. So I think very important meeting happening there, and we would be waiting for a statement coming out of it.
Well, in fact, Abhishek, I'll request you to join us in a short while from now. Perhaps one key question that I wanted to ask you is that what is really expected, what's the outcome that one would expect from this meeting? Perhaps you'll take it after a short break, because that's the key question. What next? On the other side, we get you full details of that meeting taking place between President Zelensky and Prime Minister Modi in Hiroshima.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for 10 years, with top 10 ranked institutions in management, engineering, biotech, law, masscom, telecom, hospitality, fashion and more. Yet another top ranking for Amity University.
Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these?
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions.
Rice.
Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की. ठीक है, मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, आप पूछने दीजिए. मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, पूछने दीजिए. मैं पूछता हूँ बेरोजगारी की बात, पूछने दीजिए. राहुल.
सर यू आर सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं, आज जनता जानना चाहती है सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं, आज जानना चाहती है जनता कि इतने लोगों की मौत हो गई है सर, लेकिन एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं सर, एफआईआर में सर आज राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री है, इतने लोगों की डेथ हो गई है सर, लेकिन कोई जवाब नहीं है सर, अब तक एक्शन को लेकर भी कुछ नहीं किया गया सर.
The army from Khorasan, which is from Afghanistan, will come before the end of time. They will attack India, and they will be the best among the mankind.
So basically, he wanted to attack India.
basically.
So he said that to you.
The biggest actions of the movements, we've killed 2,700 police officers and of various rank, chief minister, generals of the army. These are all targeted killings.
लालू जी, आपके शहाबुद्दीन से क्या रिश्ते हैं?
अरे तुम बराबर यही सवाल पूछते हो।
फोन पे आप बात करते हैं सर शहाबुद्दीन से?
अरे यार फालतू करता गिरोगे यार। अरे छोड़ो,
बातें होती हैं जेल में।
कैसे बात होगी जेल से?
टेप आए थे टेप चला
तुम्हारे पास होगा टेप?
टेप है, वो चलाया भी।
चलाते रहो, हरि का भजन गाते रहो।
पत्रकारों को आपने गालियां,
बहुत बदतमीज है तुम्हारा रिपोर्ट।
आपने भी तो उनसे बदतमीजी करी।
फिर वही जवाब बोल रहा है, दे देंगे दुम का नाच के गिर जाओगे।
लालू जी,
आज टीवी बने हुए लोगों को अपील किया है कि आज टीवी का बाइकाट करो।
Back-to-back bilateral and mega engagements for Prime Minister Modi on sidelines of G7 summit. From meeting with Japanese Prime Minister to bonhomie with President Biden, India's diplomacy on display in Hiroshima. Prime Minister Modi meets President Zelensky in his first in-person meeting after the Russia-Ukraine war. CBI files charge sheet against Congress leader Titler, mentions Titler provoked mob.
ग्यारह मई को सुप्रीम कोर्ट की कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बेंच ने कहा कि केंद्र की सरकार का आदेश गलत था। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि ताकत दिल्ली की चुनी हुई सरकार के पास है।
AAP calls centre's ordinance on services unconstitutional. BJP hits back. In dock for jobs scam, Trinamool Congress leader Abhishek Banerjee questioned by the Central Bureau of Investigation. At the G7, Prime Minister's diplomacy is on display. In a latest bilateral, Prime Minister Modi met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a first in-person meeting since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war. Earlier, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held bilateral meetings with his Japanese counterpart and later unveiled the bust of Mahatma Gandhi in Hiroshima during his visit to the city to attend the annual summit of the G7 grouping and the third in-person Quad leaders meeting. G7 leaders are expected to strongly condemn Russia's war on Ukraine while pledging their continuing support for Ukraine. Ukraine President Zelensky will also join the session. In fact, he's in all likelihood would be addressing the leaders present there. Prime Minister Modi also held a bilateral meet with his Vietnamese counterpart. A short while back, President Zelensky and Prime Minister Modi, along with the delegation from both sides, the Indian and Ukrainian side, met for a meeting. We do not know at this point in time what really transpired or what lies ahead in terms of the roadmap and what's India's position going to be on this entire matter. Because remember, a lot of speculations doing the round that with observers like India, Brazil, who have not taken a clear position as far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. Will the presence of President Zelensky amongst the G7 nations, who most of them have supported Ukraine, will that actually lead to a situation where any of the nations will be changing their position on this entire matter? As far as India is concerned, India has made it abundantly clear that they're not taking sides, be it Russia or for that matter Ukraine, and India has been very vocal about the fact, but Prime Minister Modi saying that this is not an era of war. which is a clear indication that India has been advocating for a dialogue between both the nations so that the war comes to an end. Well, that's a position that has been welcomed by the Ukrainians too, given the fact that they essentially see that the neutral position that has been taken by India would actually lead to a much more fruitful situation. Madhav Nalapat is joining us on this broadcast. Mr. Nalapat, thank you very much for joining us on this broadcast. A significant meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Ukrainian President Zelensky. What's also important to highlight, perhaps, the position that we have seen of the Ukrainians. They've always sought for an Indian help on this entire matter. They actually perhaps put their feet on the accelerator the moment they wanted to criticize India as far as India's ability to buy or purchase Russian oil. But that appears to have now changed. And as I was asking this question previously also, the response coming in from the Ukrainian side vis-a-vis India buying Russian oil seems to have now muted, and that perhaps signifies that Ukraine essentially sees India's position on this matter quite vital.
Ukraine is certainly not happy with India's position, which is a very principled position, and that is that this war is a disaster from day one. Now, the sooner it is ended, the better. The fact is that every day that this war continues, the biggest sufferer is Ukraine. And the biggest and equally big sufferer is the global south, of which India is the champion. So quite frankly, the Ukrainians are looking at India as essentially adopting their position, which is that all the land that has been lost to the regime in Kiev since 2014, since the Maidan revolution, should be should be won back by Ukraine. This is an impossible situation. Ukrainians said it's never going to happen. And if India were to take that stand, India would be adopting a position that is completely contrary to the facts on the ground, and which frankly makes as little sense as the position of the European Union and the United States. So quite frankly, I don't believe that Ukraine is very happy with India's stand, but I'm delighted that there has been a meeting between President Zelensky and Prime Minister Modi, and hopefully Prime Minister Modi will go some distance in convincing President Zelensky that as a patriotic Ukrainian, he needs to end this war now before further damage is done to his country and his people. This is an unwinnable war for Ukraine unless NATO directly comes into the fray.
But Professor Dalapat, what many also seem to be missing out is that, yes, at some point in time, the Ukrainians too need to come back on the negotiating table. But also the onus lies with President Putin. Why is it that this entire onus appears to be only on the Ukrainian side and nothing really on the part of the Russians? Because at the end of the day, Russians too need to understand that the territorial integrity and the territorial sovereignty of a nation should be respected.
Look, our territorial integrity and sovereignty was disrespected in 1947 by Pakistan and in early 1952 by China. And China has again challenged our sovereignty. Pakistan has challenged our sovereignty multiple times. I have not seen any condemnation of either China or Pakistan in the countries that are now racing to talk about the issue of sovereignty. Does sovereignty apply only to countries in a particular geographic zone, or does it apply to countries everywhere? Does the sovereignty that is so precious in Ukraine, according to NATO, also apply to the sovereignty of the world's largest democracy? The fact of the matter is that from the Ukrainian side, a settlement is contingent on Russia withdrawing to where it was, before this conflict started, and essentially Kiev taking back control of the Russian-speaking regions. And don't forget, in 2014, the Russian language, Russian-speaking people were made second-class citizens in the rest of Ukraine. So they want to go back to that status quo. And unfortunately, it's an unacceptable status quo to the other side. India is pushing for...
युद्ध पूरे विश्व के लिए बहुत बड़ा मुद्दा है। पूरे विश्व पर इसके अनेक प्रकार के प्रभाव भी पड़े, लेकिन मैं इसे राजनीति या अर्थव्यवस्था का मुद्दा नहीं मानता। मेरे लिए यह मानवता का मुद्दा है, मानवीय मूल्यों का मुद्दा है। युद्ध की पीड़ा क्या होती है, ये आप हम सबसे ज्यादा जानते हैं। लेकिन पिछले साल जब हमारे बच्चे यूक्रेन से वापस आए, तब उन्होंने परिस्थितियों का जो वर्णन किया, उसमें मैं आपकी वेदना और यूक्रेन के नागरिकों की वेदना भली भांति समझ पाता था, उसका अंदाज लगा पाता था। और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि इसके समाधान के लिए भारत और निजी रूप से मैं स्वयं, हमसे जो कुछ भी हो सकता है हम अवश्य करेंगे।
Well, that a big statement now coming in from Prime Minister Modi, making that assurance to the Ukrainian side that whatever possible, whatever means that can be to bring an end to the war, India is going to do that. In fact, Prime Minister Modi also goes on to say that this is not about politics or, for that matter, economics of this entire war. What he is certainly concerned about is the fact that this is a humanitarian crisis, and no one understands it better than the Ukrainian president himself. The Prime Minister essentially also reaching out, saying that all measures would be taken, and whatever India can, India will do, and he will personally be looking into it. Remember that first meeting taking place between Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky, and a big statement now being made by Prime Minister Modi in order to make that kind of assurance. Remember, the entire world is now basically focusing on what's happening in Russia and in Ukraine, and whether at all the war will come to an end or not. That's been at the top of the mind of most of the nations attending the G7 at this point in time, even the observers who are present there. Remember, that's going to dominate the talks that are taking place right now. The last time that the Ukrainian president met Prime Minister was when during the climate change conference. Let's once again listen to what the Prime Minister had to say a short while back.
एक डेढ़ साल से हम लगातार फोन पर तो बातचीत करते रहे हैं, लेकिन ग्लासगो के बाद लंबे अरसे के बाद आज मिलने का अवसर मिल रहा है। यूक्रेन में चल रहा युद्ध पूरे विश्व के लिए बहुत बड़ा मुद्दा है। पूरे विश्व पर इसके अनेक प्रकार के प्रभाव भी पड़े, लेकिन मैं इसे राजनीति या अर्थव्यवस्था का मुद्दा नहीं मानता। मेरे लिए यह मानवता का मुद्दा है, मानवीय मूल्यों का मुद्दा है। युद्ध की पीड़ा क्या होती है, ये आप हम सबसे ज्यादा जानते हैं। लेकिन पिछले साल जब हमारे बच्चे यूक्रेन से वापस आए, तब उन्होंने परिस्थितियों का जो वर्णन किया, उसमें मैं आपकी वेदना और यूक्रेन के नागरिकों की वेदना भली भांति समझ पाता था, उसका अंदाज लगा पाता था। और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि इसके समाधान के लिए भारत और निजी रूप से मैं स्वयं, हमसे जो कुछ भी हो सकता है हम अवश्य करेंगे।
Well, that was the statement that was made by Prime Minister Modi during the meeting that he had with President Zelensky. We will wait and watch whether at all there has been some sort of a response coming in from President Zelensky too. We'll see if we've got the audio of what President Zelensky too had to say, because remember, this is the first meeting that both the leaders are having after the last meeting that took place in Glasgow. In fact, that too was... we're picking up right now the latest details that are coming in, that the Ukrainian president has spoken to the Prime Minister about G20 and has also thanked India for the aid and UN support. We'll try and get in more details. We'll also see if some guests are joining us on this broadcast, but Madhav Nalapat is joining us on this broadcast. Mr. Nalapat, you've heard what Prime Minister Modi had to say on the expected lines, but this is a firm position that India has taken. But how would you really read into what the Prime Minister says, that India is going to do what it can?
India has done a lot. I'm told there has been provision of massive assistance to Ukraine in terms of pharmaceuticals and other humanitarian needs. India has got a very realistic position. And that realistic position, frankly, is that what is needed is an immediate ceasefire. And that immediate ceasefire, the time for that was actually almost from the time this war began. And there was an effort at that last April 2022. But the problem was that the Ukrainian side has been adamant on recapturing all the territory that has been autonomous since 2014. Now, this is in my view, from the beginning, it's a futile exercise. But NATO, unfortunately, is also believing that this futile exercise is possible and that you can humiliate the Russian Federation. They are treating the Russian Federation as though it were the Soviet Union. It's not. So from that point of view, India's position has always been, please end a war that is damaging global security, especially food security, very badly. Please end a war that is daily taking lives of Ukrainians and Russians in particular, but other nationalities as well. Please end this war now. Prime Minister Modi made this, if I recall, last September directly to President Putin. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi is a realist and he's not a maximalist. What is happening is Zelensky has followed a maximalist position. And what we see in history is that those who follow such positions often end up creating havoc for their own people. Every day that this war is continuing, the Ukrainian people are being hammered. And every day this war is continuing, the rest of the world is being put at risk. So India has stuck to its principled position. And I'd like to say, I am not among those who are criticizing this particular meeting. I warmly welcome the meeting that Prime Minister Modi had with Mr. Zelensky, because Prime Minister Modi has regarded from the very beginning Mr. Zelensky as a friend. And it is thanks to Mr. Zelensky also, of course, not to mention President Putin, that all our Indian students, Pakistani students are waving the Indian flag, Arab students, Afghan students, Bangladeshi students, all waving the Indian flag, were able to escape from the war zone in the very early weeks of this war. It was because of Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin and their relations with India. So I'd like to say the Prime Minister is sticking to his principal position that India views both sides as friends, and India would like an immediate end to this conflict. India would have liked that immediate end, in February of last year. It would have liked an immediate end in April of last year, September, August of last year, when the Prime Minister made that statement directly to President Putin. And India would like it now. India has not budged from its position. I think the effort will be to try and get Ukraine to budge, but it's not going to happen because, unfortunately, the G7 continues to instill this hope in Zelensky that somehow the NATO will get involved in the war. And that will be a nightmare for NATO, a nightmare for the whole world, because it might open the door to a nuclear conflict. So what Mr. Zelensky wants, frankly, will not just destroy Ukraine. it could destroy a lot of other countries as well. So there is a fundamental gap between the thinking of the Indian side and the Ukrainian side. But Mr. Zelensky, India regards Mr. Zelensky as a friend. India regards Ukraine as a friend. And this meeting by Prime Minister Modi, which I know will be unpopular in many quarters in India, it will certainly be very unpopular in Russia and very unwelcome to China, which would like to basically, be between India and China. It does not want India to have relationship with Ukraine at all, but it itself wants a relationship with Ukraine, although it is China that is helping Russia to continue to fight this war. So I'd only like to say, I'm glad they met. I don't think minds are going to be changed. Zelensky will not change Prime Minister Modi's mind. Prime Minister Modi will not change President Zelensky's mind. But it's always good for leaders to meet and discuss each other's perspectives honestly and straightforwardly. And as the Prime Minister said, in the interests of humanity, global humanity, especially if I may say the global South, please end this war now.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Nalapat, for putting this into perspective. But many would say that the onus only does not lie with Ukraine. The onus also lies with the Russian side for putting an end to this war, especially given the fact, Professor Nalapat, that Russians have also not really respected any of the treaties or agreements that were basically signed, the Minsk agreement being one such, and hence one would say that the battle still continues. One will have to draw the lines. But as far as India's position is concerned, as Professor Nalapat was also pointing out, a principled position, and the Prime Minister making it very clear that this is also about the humanitarian crisis that one is essentially staring at. Slipping into a short break, on the other side, our rolling coverage of the G7 summit continues.
लालू जी, आपके शहाबुद्दीन से क्या रिश्ते हैं?
अरे तुम बराबर यही सवाल पूछते हो।
फोन पे आप बात करते हैं सर शहाबुद्दीन से?
यार फालतू करता गिरोगे यार। अरे छोड़ो,
बातें होती हैं जेल में।
कैसे बात होगी जेल से?
टेप आए थे शहाबुद्दीन, टेप चला
तुम्हारे पास होगा टेप?
टेप है, वो चलाया भी।
चलाते रहो, हरि का भजन गाते रहो।
पत्रकारों को आपने गालियां,
बहुत बदतमीज है तुम्हारा रिपोर्टर।
आपने भी तो उनसे बदतमीजी करी।
फिर वही जवाब बोल रहा है, दे देंगे दुम का नाच के गिर जाओगे।
लालू जी,
आज टीवी बने हुए लोगों को अपील किया है कि आज टीवी का बाइकाट करो। ये भारत के लोगों की जीत है। वंदे वंदे। समझ में नहीं आ रहा, ये देखिए आप पूरा का पूरा टूट चुका है।
We have to leave from here. Due to the security reasons, we perhaps may not be able to reveal the location of the bunker where we were just a while back. These are the images which shows you the reality of what really happened in the city of Bucha. What you see right now on your screens is the reality of this war where thousands and thousands of Ukrainians have lost their lives. We are standing in the premise of a church right in the middle of Bucha, where we have seen bodies after bodies were being dumped inside these graveyards.
These are the people that physically assaulted me. Sir, he has been cooperating with the on the occasion of the second
anniversary of the ruling LDF government led by Chief Minister Narendra Modi in the state. A massive protest is happening outside the secretariat, where they've circled the entire secretariat and pointing out the series of corruption that has taken place under the current left government. And these are the visuals that are coming in. The north block, the north gate of the secretariat has been completely been surrounded by 10,000s of Congress workers over here, along with the allies, including the Muslim League and other allies of the Congress party. The leader of opposition is right now pointing out about the electricity increase in the electricity bill, as well as the water bill, as well as all the other bills that has been increased by the current government in the state. About 20,000 of the Congress workers and volunteers have all gathered here, and they plan to circle and continue this protest throughout the day in the heart of Thiruvananthapuram, in the capital city of Thiruvananthapuram.
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know, those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in the boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.
Sachin, you tell me why you physically assaulted. These are the people that physically assaulted.
Sir, he has been cooperating with the summons. Why have you arrested him in such fashion?
Just to get out of this. Just to get out of this.
Mr. Charles, what lies ahead? France will be safe for you.
Rahul, what do you have to say about the involvement of the shell companies, Rahul? Rahul, involvement of the shell companies, Rahul.
Was there an email that was sent to you from Shashi Tharoor asking for help?
Show me the mail.
He's asking for help, saying that forensic expert ko bhejo ye, asking that the independent forensic report has to be sent to the Home Minister, to the Health Minister.
चलो
उसके बारे में कोई भी पक्षपात है?
भारत की परिभाषा से मतलब सहमत है.
Everybody has right to self-determine.
Mr. Stalin, what do you have to say on the recent death of Lance Naik Prabhu? Mr. Stalin, what do you have to say?
Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these?
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions.
Right.
Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की. ठीक है, मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, आप पूछने दीजिए. मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, पूछने दीजिए. मैं पूछता हूँ, बेरोजगारी की बात पूछने दीजिए. राहुल.
सर, you are the सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं. आज जनता जानना चाहती है सर. सर, आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं.
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know, those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars and HF radio.
Back-to-back bilateral and mega engagements with the Prime Minister on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Japan. From meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister to bonhomie with Biden, India's diplomacy on display in Hiroshima. Prime Minister Modi meets Zelensky in his first in-person meeting after the Russia-Ukraine war. CBI files charge sheet against Congress leader Jagdish Titler, mentions how Titler provoked the mob.
11 मई को सुप्रीम कोर्ट की कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बेंच ने कहा कि केंद्र की सरकार का आदेश गलत था। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि ताकत दिल्ली की चुनी हुई सरकार के पास है।
Aam Aadmi Party call centers ordinance on services unconstitutional. The BJP hits back. It's the big political headline of the day, the BJP versus AAP face-off. In the dock for job scam, Trinamool Congress leader Abhishek Banerjee questioned by the CBI.
कल इन्होंने 4 बजे कोर्ट बंद हुआ, 5 बजे और 10 बजे इन्होंने ऑर्डिनेंस पास करके उस कोर्ट के आदेश को पलट दिया। जिस दिन आदेश आया था उसके अगले दिन इन लोगों ने सोच लिया था कि ऑर्डिनेंस लाके इस आदेश को पलटना है, क्योंकि अगर हम सीक्वेंस ऑफ इवेंट्स देखें, जजमेंट आने के और उसको पलटने के बीच में 8 दिन है। पहले 3 दिन सेक्रेटरी सर्विसेज गायब हो गया, उसका फोन ऑफ हो गया। 3 दिन के बाद सेक्रेटरी सर्विसेज निकलते हैं, कहते हैं मैं कोर्ट का ऑर्डर मानने को तैयार हूं, तो चीफ सेक्रेटरी फिर बीच बीच में गायब हो जाते हैं और सिविल सर्विसेज बोर्ड की मीटिंग होने में 3 दिन लग जाते हैं। फिर फाइनली जब सिविल सर्विसेज बोर्ड की मीटिंग होती है और एलजी के पास प्रस्ताव भेजा जाता है तो 2 दिन एलजी साहब बैठ जाते हैं उसके ऊपर। 8 दिन इन लोगों ने इस तरह से बिता दिए। ये सारे के सारे कोर्ट के बंद होने का इंतजार कर रहे थे कि कब कोर्ट बंद होगा, कब कोर्ट की छुट्टियां होगी और कब हम अध्यादेश लाएंगे। तो प्रश्न ये उठता है कि ये कोर्ट के बंद होने का इंतजार क्यों कर रहे थे कि जब कोर्ट बंद होगा तब हम अध्यादेश लाएंगे। पहले ले आते, जब कोर्ट की छुट्टियां नहीं चल रही थी, जब कोर्ट खुला था, जिस दिन अध्यादेश आया 3 दिन बाद, 4 दिन बाद, 5 दिन बाद ले आते, क्योंकि ये अंदर दिल के अंदर जानते हैं कि ये अध्यादेश पूरी तरह से गैर कानूनी, गैर संवैधानिक और जनतंत्र के खिलाफ है। इन्हें पूरी तरह से पता था कि अगर सुप्रीम कोर्ट के खुले होते हुए अगर ये अध्यादेश ले आते और हम अगर अगले दिन इसको सुप्रीम कोर्ट में चुनौती देते तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट में ये 5 मिनट भी अध्यादेश टिकने वाला नहीं था। तो ये चाहते थे कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट बंद हो और उसके बाद ये अध्यादेश लेके आए। अंदर खाने ये भी जानते हैं कि ये अध्यादेश 5 मिनट भी टिकने वाला नहीं है। तो क्या इस अध्यादेश की लाइफ केवल 1.25 महीने की है जब तक सुप्रीम कोर्ट बंद है? 1 जुलाई को सुप्रीम कोर्ट खुलेगा, हम इसको चैलेंज करेंगे सुप्रीम कोर्ट के अंदर, और फिर सुप्रीम कोर्ट, हम जानते हैं कि ये भी जानते हैं अंदर खाने, ये भी जानते हैं कि इस अध्यादेश का क्या होगा। तो क्या ये अध्यादेश केवल इस 1.25 महीने की छुट्टियों के लिए लाया गया है? आज मैंने आप ही लोगों के चैनलों पे देखा कि ये कह रहे हैं कि हम इन्होंने रिव्यू पिटीशन फाइल कर दी है, किसी ने कॉपी भी भेजी है, शायद कर दी है या करने वाले हैं, कर दी है। रिव्यू पिटीशन का क्या मतलब रह गया? जब ऑर्डिनेंस लाके इन्होंने पूरे के पूरे जजमेंट को खत्म कर दिया, तो जो जजमेंट ही नहीं बचा उसका रिव्यू का कैसा? तो रिव्यू पिटीशन तो तभी मेंटेनेबल होगी जब अध्यादेश को वापस लिया जाएगा रिव्यू पिटीशन की हियरिंग के पहले। तो ये क्या ये इंडिकेशन है कि जैसे ही सुप्रीम कोर्ट खुलेगा इस अध्यादेश को वापस ले लिया जाएगा? नहीं तो रिव्यू पिटीशन का मतलब ही नहीं है। जज तो यही कहेंगे कि भाई तुमने तो सारा हमारा जजमेंट खत्म कर दिया, तो रिव्यू पिटीशन किस बात की है? रिव्यू पिटीशन तो कुछ है ही नहीं। तो ऐसा लगता है कि ये केवल एक भद्दा मजाक किया गया है जनतंत्र के खिलाफ, देश के लोगों के साथ, दिल्ली के 2 करोड़ लोगों के साथ। एक तरह से सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जजमेंट दिया, क्लियर जजमेंट दिया कि दिल्ली की चुनी हुई सरकार को पूरा अधिकार है दिल्ली चलाने का, 3 सब्जेक्ट्स छोड़ के, पुलिस, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर एंड लैंड, बाकी सारे सब्जेक्ट्स हमारे पास हैं। उस जजमेंट को 1 हफ्ते के अंदर ये अध्यादेश लाके अगर ये टर्न डाउन कर देते हैं, तो ये आम आदमी पार्टी तो बहुत छोटी सी पार्टी है, हम तो बहुत छोटे लोग हैं, ये तो सीधे सीधे केंद्र सरकार सुप्रीम कोर्ट को चुनौती दे रही है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट को चैलेंज कर रही है कि तुम जो मर्जी ऑर्डर कर लो, तुम्हारे सारे ऑर्डर हम 2 मिनट के अंदर ऑर्डिनेंस लाके, बिल लाके सब खत्म कर देंगे। ये चैलेंज इन्होंने ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट की मैजेस्टी को चैलेंज किया जा रहा है, उनकी पावर को चैलेंज किया जा रहा है कि तुम जो मर्जी ऑर्डर कर दो, हम तुम्हारे सारे ऑर्डर खत्म कर देंगे। सुप्रीम कोर्ट की इंसल्ट की जा रही है। दिस इज अ डायरेक्ट कंटेम्प्ट ऑफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट। आम आदमी पार्टी को 3 बार प्रचंड बहुमत, 4 बार, 3 बार असेंबली के अंदर मिला और 1 बार एमसीडी के अंदर प्रचंड बहुमत मिला आम आदमी पार्टी को। दिल्ली के लोगों ने बार बार चीख के कहा है कि हमें आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार चाहिए, हमें आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार चाहिए, हमें आम आदमी पार्टी पसंद है। और बार बार इन लोगों ने आम आदमी पार्टी को की सरकार को काम करने से रोका है। तो ये तो एक तरह से खुली चुनौती है कि तुम जिसको भी, हमारी पार्टी के अलावा जिसको भी चुनोगे, हम उसको काम नहीं करने देंगे। ये क्या बात हो गई? ऐसे देश कैसे चलेगा? पहले ये 2015 में नोटिफिकेशन लेके आए, उस नोटिफिकेशन के बाद ये एक 2021 में एक कानून लेके आए, जिस कानून से और हमारी पावर्स छीनी गई। पिछले साल झूठे केसेस में फंसा के हम अच्छे स्कूल बना रहे थे, हमारे एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर को जेल में डाल दिया ताकि स्कूल ना बन सके। हम अच्छे मोहल्ला क्लिनिक अस्पताल बना रहे थे, हमारे उसको हेल्थ मिनिस्टर को जेल में डाल दिया ताकि स्कूल अस्पताल ना बन सके। और अब ये कानून लेके आ गए। ये बेसिकली तो काम करने से रोकना चाहते हैं आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार को, क्योंकि जैसा काम आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार कर रही है वैसा काम करने की इनकी ना तो नीयत है और ना इनकी कैपेसिटी है वैसा काम करने की। पर मैं दिल्ली के लोगों को भी और देश के लोगों को भी कहना चाहता हूं कि स्पीड स्लो जरूर होगी कामों की। आज जो इन्होंने अध्यादेश पारित किया, उन्होंने और भी कई सारे सेक्शंस डाले हैं, अभी भी हम स्टडी कर रहे हैं, तो स्पीड जरूर स्लो होगी, लेकिन सारे काम होंगे, काम को मैं रुकने नहीं दूंगा। ये अध्यादेश दिल्ली के 2 करोड़ लोगों को बीजेपी ने एक तरह से तमाचा मारा है। बीजेपी का कहना है तुम जिस भी सरकार को चुनोगे, चुन के देख लो, हम काम नहीं करने देंगे, हम काम रोकेंगे, हम तुम्हारी सरकार को काम नहीं करने देंगे। ये तो दिल्ली के लोगों को का अधिकार है अपनी सरकार चुनने का। भाई संविधान देता है अधिकार कि आप जिस मर्जी को वोट देके चुनो। वो कह रहे हैं कि जिसको भी चुनोगे हम तुमको काम नहीं करने देंगे। आम आदमी पार्टी छोटी पार्टी है, हम बहुत छोटे लोग हैं। देश बड़ा है, देश इंपॉर्टेंट है, कल हम नहीं होंगे कोई और होगा, लेकिन देश रहेगा। इस तरह से सरेआम जनतंत्र को कुचलना, सुप्रीम कोर्ट को वो दिखाना, ये सही नहीं है। हम इसके खिलाफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट में या वो डालेंगे, इस ऑर्डिनेंस के खिलाफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट जाएंगे। और जब से ये ऑर्डिनेंस आया, केवल दिल्ली नहीं देश भर से मेरे पास फोन आ रहे हैं, यहां तक कि बीजेपी के कट्टर समर्थक भी कह रहे हैं कि ये तो मोदी जी ने ठीक नहीं किया, ये तो प्रधानमंत्री जी ने ठीक नहीं किया। भाई 2015 में तुम नोटिफिकेशन लेके आए, उसी टाइम ले आते ऑर्डिनेंस। कोई कुछ नहीं कहता। 8 साल के संघर्ष के बाद दिल्ली के लोगों ने संघर्ष किया, आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार ने संघर्ष किया। संघर्ष करने के बाद सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जब इतना साफ साफ फैसला दे दिया, उस फैसले को तुम पलट देते हो और तुम कहते हो हम सुप्रीम कोर्ट को नहीं मानते। इसके तो ये तो पूरा देश देख रहा है और पूरा देश कह रहा है ये तो बहुत गलत काम किया इन लोगों ने। तो दिल्ली के लोगों के बीच में जाऊंगा मैं अब, और बहुत जल्दी दिल्ली के अंदर महारैली की जाएगी। और मुझे जिस तरह से रिएक्शन आ रहे हैं जनता के, मेरे को लगता है कि इस बार दिल्ली के अंदर भारतीय जनता पार्टी को जनता 7 में से 1 भी सीट नहीं देने वाली। जनता बहुत नाराज है इनके हथकंडों से, इनकी तानाशाही से और इनकी गुंडागर्दी से। मैं आज इस मंच के जरिए सभी ऑपोजिशन पार्टीज को अपील करना चाहता हूं कि राज्यसभा के अंदर जब ये बिल आएगा, ऑर्डिनेंस जब बिल के रूप में पेश किया जाएगा, इसे किसी भी हालत के अंदर राज्यसभा में पारित नहीं करवाना। मैं खुद एक पार्टी के नेताओं से जाके मिलूंगा, उनसे समर्थन मांगूंगा कि इस बिल को अपोज करना है, ये जनतंत्र के खिलाफ है। किसी भी हालत में हमें इस बिल को पास नहीं होने देना राज्यसभा के अंदर। अगर आप अभी नहीं हुई है, पर मैं करूंगा, सबसे
So it's Arvind Kejriwal, as expected, towing his, of course, party line. He's the party, so he's towing his party line, saying it's direct contempt of court, questioning the ordinance that Republic TV broke last night, a little after 10 p.m. He's basically questioning the centre, saying that they've bought time while the Supreme Court was on leave, saying that this ordinance would be short-lived. He's confident that when the Supreme Court resumes its hearings, this will be quashed. We have some more breaking news coming in. Let's go across straight to that. All right, we have some more breaking news on the story. A significant development in the Lieutenant Governor versus Delhi government tussle. The Lieutenant Governor, sources close to him have told Republic TV about details of the harassment. Nearly 8 instances, I repeat, 8 instances of alleged harassment have now come to light. It now appears that there was a reason why the centre felt that this ordinance should be brought in, because as per the centre and sources close to the Delhi Lieutenant Governor, there were reports of harassment of some of these officers. The centre's ordinance basically reinstated the final authority of the Delhi Lieutenant Governor. It gave powers back to him in transfers, postings of bureaucrats, also solidified his role as an administrator, empowered to take decisions on proposals considered or decided by the elected government in Delhi, the Kejriwal government, and it's now triggered a big fight. It appears now that the Delhi government, after the Supreme Court verdict, the constitutional bench judgment, was vindictive. It appears, as per the claims made by some of these officers, there are details of harassment that we're picking up. Let's listen in.
अफसरों के निर्णय के बारे में एक पारदर्शी और उत्तरदायी प्रक्रिया के लिए ये ऑर्डिनेंस लाया गया है.
Not only is this a contempt of Supreme Court, it is absolutely an unconstitutional ordinance, because a power that is given by the Constitution cannot be taken away by a notification or by an ordinance or even by a law.
Any of these principles cannot be taken away by a statute, by an ordinance. So what you've done is knowingly, you have done something unconstitutional. You have not removed the basis of the judgment, because the basis of the judgment is a constitutional basis. You cannot remove a constitutional basis by statutory enactments.
देखिए, ऐसा है कि ये अध्यादेश पूरी तरीके से गैर संवैधानिक है, भारत के लोकतंत्र और भारत के संविधान के खिलाफ है, और इससे सबसे बढ़ के सर्वोच्च न्यायालय की संविधान पीठ के 5 जजों के फैसले के खिलाफ है.
कोर्ट का निर्णय आया था, उस निर्णय को पढ़ लेते, समझ लेते, उसके अनुरूप कार्य करते. मुझे ये बता दें केजरीवाल, रात को 3 बजे ताले तोड़ के फाइल कॉपी करने की क्या जरूरत थी? जैसे ही निर्णय आया उससे
आप बता दीजिए क्या कारण?
अपनी चोरी छुपा रहे हैं, अपना भ्रष्टाचार छुपा रहे हैं. उनको पता है कि जो अफसर उनके खिलाफ जांच कर रहा है, उसी अफसर को हटाने की मांग कर रहे हैं.
Of the center to bring the ordinance on this, when I say that there is reason behind this, the Constitution says, and Constitution clearly said, कि the authority is Lieutenant Governor, and the act of Arvind Kejriwal government is like that you are above the Constitution and you're behaving like that. न खाता न बही, जो केजरीवाल कहीं वही सही, that is Hindi phrase on that.
ये अध्यादेश
माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट के फैसले के अनुसार ही है। जब उन्होंने फैसला दिया था तभी कहा था कि ये सर्विसेज की ट्रांसफर पोस्टिंग कैसे होगा, इसके नियम की स्पष्टता के लिए केंद्र कानून ला सकता है, और केंद्र कानून ला दिया।
Motorola, India's best 5G smartphone brand.
Congress leader Siddaramaiah took oath as Karnataka Chief Minister in a swearing-in ceremony at the Katira Stadium in Bengaluru. With this, the Congress leader became the 24th Chief Minister of the state. KPCC Chief D.K. Shivakumar also took oath as Deputy Chief Minister. Both leaders were administered oaths by Governor Tawar Chand Gehlot. Trinamool Congress leader Abhishek Banerjee was summoned to appear before the CBI at its Kolkata office today as part of the agency's investigation into the school job scam. Abhishek Banerjee, who was on the campaign trail in Bankura, said he was rushing back to Kolkata to answer the summons. Following summons by the CBI to appear before its Kolkata office, Trinamool Congress's leader, parliamentarian Abhishek Banerjee, wrote to the agency informing he has moved Supreme Court for an urgent hearing challenging the Calcutta High Court order to question him. IRS officer Sameer Wankede, also the former zonal director of NCB, appeared before the CBI for questioning over his alleged extortion charge in the Aryan drugs case. He was earlier granted protection by the Bombay High Court on grounds of attending the summons. The Congress-led UDF gerawed the Thiruvananthapuram Secretariat amid the CPM second anniversary of governance under Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan, alleging misgovernance, violence, corruption, inflation faced by public. UDF workers led by Congress staged protests around the Secretariat premises, leading to traffic disruption in various parts of the capital. With less than a week to go before the G20 tourism working group meetings in Jammu and Kashmir, the NIA and other security agencies have ramped up their preventive action against terror. Multiple NIA raids were reported underway from Kashmir. Alert BSF troops intercepted another drone, shot it down in Punjab. The drone fell on the Pakistani side and could not be recovered. This is the third Pakistani drone that the BSF has intercepted in the last 2 days. Pakistan has been using drones to smuggle drugs into Punjab and other regions along the border. Only a few days ahead of the G20 tourism working group meetings in Kashmir, the Indian Army gunned down a terrorist in the Poonch sector. Arms, ammunition, narcotics recovered in the operation. Massive fire broke out at a scrap warehouse facility in the Rajnagar area of Uttar Pradesh's Ghaziabad. Fire tenders pressed into service. Fire services issued a statement saying they doused the flames. No injuries or casualties were reported.
On the sidelines of G7 summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveiled a statue of Mahatma Gandhi in Hiroshima. He said that the bust of Mahatma Gandhi will take forward the idea of non-violence.
आज विश्व क्लाइमेट और आतंकवाद की लड़ाई से जूझ रहा है। पूज्य बापू के आदर्श क्लाइमेट के साथ जो लड़ाई है उसे जीतने का उत्तम से उत्तम मार्ग है।
The unveiling of Gandhi statue in Hiroshima is significant as it carries a message of peace in the city where nearly 140,000 people were killed in a nuclear attack during the Second World War. Bureau Report for Republic TV.
Back-to-back bilateral and mega engagements with the Prime Minister on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Getting you the full details of his visit to Japan. From meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister to bonhomie with Biden, India's diplomacy on display in Hiroshima.
Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की ठीक है मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ आप पूछने दीजिए मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ पूछने दीजिए मैं पूछता हूँ बेरोजगारी की बात पूछने दीजिए राहुल
सर यू आर द सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं आज जनता जानना चाहती है सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं आज जानना चाहती है जनता कि इतने लोगों की मौत हो गई है सर लेकिन एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं सर एफआईआर में सर आज राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री है इतने लोगों की डेथ हो गई है सर लेकिन कोई जवाब नहीं है सर अब तक एक्शन को लेकर भी कुछ नहीं किया गया सर
The army from Khorasan, which is from Afghanistan, will come before the end of time, will attack India, and they will be the best among the mankind.
So basically he wanted to attack India.
Basically.
So he said that to you.
The biggest actions of the movements, we've killed 2,700 police officers of various rank, chief minister, generals of the army. These are all targeted killings.
लालू जी आपके शहाबुद्दीन से क्या रिश्ते हैं?
अरे तुम बराबर यही सवाल पूछते हो
फोन पे आप बात करते हैं सर शहाबुद्दीन से?
यार गिरो गया अरे छोड़ो
होती है जेल में
कैसे बात होगी जेल से
टेप आए थे टेप चला
तुम्हारे पास होगा टेप
टेप है वो चलाया
चलाते रहो हरि का भजन गाते रहो
पत्रकारों को आपने गालियां
बहुत बदतमीज है तुम्हारा रिपोर्ट
आपने भी तो उनसे बदतमीजी करी
फिर वही जवाब बोल रहा है दे देंगे गुम करना से गिर जाओगे
लालू जी
आज टीवी बने हुए लोगों को अपील किया है कि आज टीवी का बाइकाट करो
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.
Getting in some breaking news now. Poster seen in Rajasthan's Kishanpole area claiming that families were forced to flee their locality. Posters were seen outside some of the homes. A Congress corporator Farid Qureshi was blamed for the alleged exodus of some of these families from the locality. We don't have a confirmation, but there are some posters that are emerging. This is what our reporter sent from the ground. Let's listen in.
भारत और खुद प्रधानमंत्री मोदी हर तरीके से हर प्रयास को करने के लिए तैयार है। क्या एक बड़ा संदेश आप देख रहे हैं इन दोनों देशों के लिए दुनिया भर?
कांग्रेस पार्षद फरीद कुरैशी यानी कि सीधा जिम्मेदार और आरोप फरीद कुरैशी जो कि कांग्रेस पार्षद हैं उन पर लगाया गया है। ये तमाम महिलाएं जो हैं वो बैठी हैं, इनसे बात करेंगे। सबसे पहले ये पोस्टर्स क्यों लगाए गए हैं?
सर हम लोगों को परेशानी है, दिन रात हमारा रहना हराम कर रखा है इन लोगों ने। यहाँ गाली क्लोज करना, ये चीजें बर्दाश्त थोड़ा ना करेंगी महिलाएं। आदमी तो घर से बाहर चले जाते हैं कमाने के लिए, औरतें हमारी दिन रात बाहर बैठती हैं, उठती हैं, आराम से बातें करते हैं हम लोग बैठ के। हमारा तो आजादी भी बिल्कुल ही वो हो गई, प्रतिबंध। तो हम लोगों को यहाँ से
Just getting that audio fixed a little bit, but getting in more details of this feed that's coming in from Rajasthan's Kishanpole area, where it is claimed that Hindu families were forced to flee their localities, and some of these posters that we're seeing on our screens are claiming that some of these families had to leave their locality. Some of the posters also blaming the local corporator for the alleged exodus of the Hindu community from the locality. Our correspondent Amardeep is at the location. You just heard him speaking there. We'll just fix that audio and go back to that feed. And the police and families, some of the families from the adjoining areas are also on location. These are the details that we're picking up. Let's go across to that feed once again. Amardeep joining us with the details. Amardeep, why don't you take us through the details? Why are these families leaving, Amardeep? Amardeep, can you hear me? Amardeep, take us through what's happening there. Why are these families leaving? What do the posters say? We are seeing, looking at some of those posters. What do those posters say? And what is the official version about these families leaving?
देखिए बिल्कुल मैं तस्वीरें आपको दिखाता हूं किशनपुर इलाके की, जहां पे पुलिस अभी यहां पे मौजूद है, यहां पे उस इलाके के लोग मौजूद है जहां पे पोस्टर्स लगे हुए हैं। और सबसे पहले पोस्टर्स दिखाता हूं, ये तस्वीरें आप दिखाएं महेश, पहले पोस्टर्स की। इन तस्वीरों को देखेंगे तो समझ में आएगा कि करीब 100 के करीब मकानों पर इस तरीके के पोस्टर
का अवसर मिल रहा है। यूक्रेन में चल रहा युद्ध पूरे विश्व के लिए बहुत बड़ा मुद्दा है। पूरे विश्व पर इसके अनेक प्रकार के प्रभाव भी पड़े हैं, लेकिन मैं इसे राजनीति या अर्थव्यवस्था का मुद्दा नहीं मानता। मेरे लिए यह मानवता का मुद्दा है, मानवीय मूल्यों का मुद्दा है। युद्ध की पीड़ा क्या होती है ये आप हम सबसे ज्यादा जानते हैं। लेकिन पिछले साल जब हमारे बच्चे यूक्रेन से वापस आए तब उन्होंने परिस्थितियों का जो वर्णन किया उसमें मैं आपकी वेदना और यूक्रेन के नागरिकों की वेदना भली भांति समझ पाता था, उसका अंदाज लगा पाता था। और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि इसके समाधान के लिए भारत और निजी रूप से मैं स्वयं, हमसे जो कुछ भी हो सकता है हम अवश्य करें।
India will do everything that it possibly can to bring an end to the war, something that he's been saying all along. The Prime Minister also talking about how the Ukraine-Russia war is a humanity issue, one of the biggest issues in the words of the Prime Minister facing the world at this moment. You just heard that excerpt of that interaction between the Prime Minister and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. That meeting was in Hiroshima. We have some more breaking news updates coming in right now. We'll take a short break on Republic. When we come back, getting you that full speech of the Prime Minister and the message that he shared with the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, on the role that India could possibly play. And we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll get you more about the other big headlines we're tracking this Saturday evening.
लालू जी, आपके शहाबुद्दीन से क्या रिश्ते हैं?
अरे तुम बराबर यही सवाल पूछते हो।
फोन पे आप बात करते हैं सर शहाबुद्दीन से?
यार फालतू करता गिरो गया। अरे छोड़ो,
बातें होती हैं जेल में।
कैसे बात होगी जेल से?
टेप आए थे शहाबुद्दीन, टेप चला
तुम्हारे पास होगा टेप?
हाँ टेप है, वो चलाए।
चलाते रहो, हरि का भजन गाते रहो।
पत्रकारों को आपने गालियां,
बहुत बदतमीज है तुम्हारा रिपोर्ट।
आपने भी तो उनसे बदतमीजी करी।
फिर वही जवाब बोल रहा है, दे देंगे गुम कर नाच के गिर जाओगे।
लालू जी,
आज टीवी बने हुए लोगों को अपील किया है कि आज टीवी का बाइकाट करो। ये भारत के लोगों की जीत है। वंदे वंदे। समझ में नहीं आ रहा। ये देखिए आप, पूरा का पूरा टूट चुका है।
We have to leave from here. Due to the security reasons, we perhaps may not be able to reveal the location of the bunker where we were just a while back. These are the images which shows you the reality of what really happened in the city of Bucha. What you see right now on your screens is the reality of this war where thousands and thousands of Ukrainians have lost their lives. We are standing in the premise of a church right in the middle of Bucha, where we have seen bodies after bodies were being dumped inside these graveyards.
Sachin, you tell me why is physically assaulted? These are the people who physically assaulted. मुझे बताओगे?
Sir, he has been cooperating with the summons prior to arresting him in such fashion.
First to get out of this. First to get out of this.
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.
Motorola, India's best 5G smartphone brand.
Back-to-back bilaterals and mega engagements for Prime Minister Modi on sidelines of G7 summit. From meeting with Japanese Prime Minister to bonhomie with Biden, India's diplomacy on display in Hiroshima. Prime Minister Modi meets Zelensky in his first in-person meeting after the Russia-Ukraine war. CBI files a charge sheet against Congress leader Jagdish Tytler, mentions that Tytler provoked mob. Aam Aadmi Party calls centre's ordinance on services unconstitutional. BJP hits back. And also getting you details of CBI filing charge sheet against Jagdish Tytler in 1984 riots case. Now, at the G7 summit, Prime Minister Modi's diplomacy is on a full display. He had his latest bilateral meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky. It was his first in-person meeting with the Ukrainian president since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war. And he very clearly said that India has always put humanity first and will continue to do so. He also said that he has been grateful to meet Zelensky in person. Let's listen in to that interaction that Prime Minister Modi had with Ukrainian President.
एक डेढ़ साल से हम लगातार फोन पर तो बातचीत करते रहे हैं, लेकिन ग्लासगो के बाद लंबे अरसे के बाद आज मिलने का अवसर मिल रहा है। यूक्रेन में चल रहा युद्ध पूरे विश्व के लिए बहुत बड़ा मुद्दा है। पूरे विश्व पर इसके अनेक प्रकार के प्रभाव भी पड़ेंगे, लेकिन मैं इसे राजनीति या अर्थव्यवस्था का मुद्दा नहीं मानता। मेरे लिए यह मानवता का मुद्दा है, मानवीय मूल्यों का मुद्दा है। युद्ध की पीड़ा क्या होती है, ये आप हम सबसे ज्यादा जानते हैं। लेकिन पिछले साल जब हमारे बच्चे यूक्रेन से वापस आए, तब उन्होंने परिस्थितियों का जो वर्णन किया, उसमें मैं आपकी वेदना और यूक्रेन के नागरिकों की वेदना भली भांति समझ पाता था, उसका अंदाज लगा पाता था। और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि इसके समाधान के लिए भारत और निजी रूप से मैं स्वयं हमसे जो कुछ भी हो सकता है हम अवश्य करेंगे।
We have Jitendra Kumar Ojha joining us live on this broadcast. He's a geopolitical and national security expert. Mr. Ojha, when we see these pictures of Prime Minister Modi and his commitment towards humanity, and also his statement, a very important statement, a very significant statement that he made while speaking to his counterpart, to his Ukrainian counterpart, and also maintaining a similar line of dialogue with Russia as well, advocating diplomacy. Do you see with India and Prime Minister Modi becoming the voice of the global South, his words would be measured very cautiously and would be taken very seriously by the West as well, as far as this war is concerned?
Absolutely, because we feel that this war was completely impossible.
Mr. Ojha, we seem to be running into some audio trouble there. We will try to reconnect with you. Just a quick recap for our viewers of on the Modi-Zelensky meeting that has taken place in Hiroshima on the sidelines of G7 summit. And we will come to Mr. Ojha in just a bit, cutting across to this live press briefing of
105 पन्नों का है, 164 इसमें पैराग्राफ्स हैं। अब अरविंद केजरीवाल जी तो जो शराब के ठेकेदार हैं उनके साथ ही समय बिताते हैं। कैसे एक शराब नीति ठेकेदारों से पूछ के लाएंगे, भ्रष्टाचार करेंगे। कट्टर बेईमान तो आप हैं अरविंद केजरीवाल जी, लेकिन आज जो आपकी सूरत देखी तो इसलिए भी दुख हुआ कि आपने कहा एक एलजी को बैठा दिया है। अरविंद केजरीवाल जी बहुत सम्मान से आपसे एक बात कहते हैं, जिस संविधान ने आपको मुख्यमंत्री बनाया है उसी संविधान के तहत दिल्ली में एलजी नियुक्त हुए हैं। तो अगर आप ऐसे शब्दों का प्रयोग करेंगे, उनका सम्मान नहीं करेंगे, तो जनता आपका सम्मान भी नहीं करेगी। और देखिए नासमझी क्या होती है या कट्टर बेईमानी क्या होती है। बोल गए कि सर्वोच्च न्यायालय में छुट्टी हो गई, अध्यादेश इसीलिए जैसे ही छुट्टी हुई कल लाया गया रात में, और ये पहले क्यों नहीं लाया गया। तो मैं दो बातें बता दूं। सबसे पहले तो अरविंद केजरीवाल जी आपने वक्तव्य दिया है कि 5 मिनट में यह अध्यादेश उड़ जाएगा। तो मुफ्त में आपको एक सलाह भी देता हूं और ज्ञान भी देता हूं। यह देश का सर्वोच्च न्यायालय है, अपने दायित्व और कर्तव्य को जानता है, और सर्वोच्च न्यायालय में कोई छुट्टी नहीं होती है, वेकेशन बेंच है। अगर आपको इतना यकीन है कि यह अध्यादेश गैर संवैधानिक है, तो अपने जो भी अधिवक्ता हैं उनसे कहिए कि सर्वोच्च न्यायालय में सोमवार को अर्जी लगा दें। दूध का दूध, पानी का पानी हो जाएगा, पता चल जाएगा अध्यादेश संवैधानिक है या नहीं है। और आप एक बात और जान लीजिए, अरविंद केजरीवाल जी, जब अध्यादेश आता है तो संविधान में प्रक्रिया भी है, किन परिस्थितियों में वो आएगा, कैसे विचार विमर्श होता है, विधिक भाषा में ड्राफ्ट होता है, कैबिनेट से अप्रूवल होता है, उसमें राष्ट्रपति की सहमति होती है। यह सारी प्रक्रिया है। कितने वर्किंग डेज थे, ये आपको जानकारी नहीं है। उसके बावजूद बड़ी जिम्मेदारी से मैं आपको इतना बता दूं, वो अध्यादेश मेरे सामने है। वो अध्यादेश संविधान के तहत पूरी तरह से संवैधानिक, जो दिल्ली का महत्व है भारत के लिए, हर नागरिक के लिए, उसको ध्यान में रखते हुए, और इस बात को भी हमने ध्यान में रखते हुए दिल्ली में ही संसद है, दिल्ली में ही राष्ट्रपति का घर है, दिल्ली में ही सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑफ इंडिया है, तमाम एम्बेसीज हैं। दिल्ली संविधान के तहत भी अगर आप चले तो एक यूनियन टेरिटरी है, यूनियन टेरिटरी। और अरविंद केजरीवाल जी, ये जो आपकी मानसिकता हो गई है अराजकता की, जंगल राज फैलाने की, संविधान को दरकिनार कर देने की, ये ठीक नहीं है। जब आप चुनाव लड़े, आप जानते थे कि आप दिल्ली में चुनाव लड़ रहे हैं जो पूर्ण राज्य नहीं है, एक यूनियन टेरिटरी है। लेकिन आपको यह लगता है कि अगर आप दिल्ली में चुनाव जीते तो संविधान के विपरीत आप काम करेंगे। आप अपशब्द कहेंगे देश के चुने हुए प्रधानमंत्री के लिए, उपराज्यपाल के लिए, आप संविधान भी नहीं पढ़ेंगे। तो अरविंद केजरीवाल जी, ऐसा होने वाला नहीं है। जनता आपको यह बताना चाहती है, दिल्ली एक यूनियन टेरिटरी है, अरविंद टेरिटरी नहीं है। संविधान से चलेगा, केजरीवाल के कानून से नहीं चलेगा। और मैं आपके सामने अब जो तथ्य रखने जा रहा हूं, इस उम्मीद से रखने जा रहा हूं कि ये सारी जानकारी उस कट्टर बेईमान अरविंद केजरीवाल तक पहुंचे जो शराब नीति का एक एक शब्द पढ़ता है, क्योंकि उसको वसूली करनी होती है, अपने घोटाले छुपाने होते हैं। लेकिन जिस संविधान की वो शपथ लेता है उसी को तार तार करता है, और उसको पढ़ने का, अध्ययन करने का समय उनके पास नहीं है। आर्टिकल 239 AA यह बिल्कुल स्पष्ट करता है, और मैं शब्दशः यहां से कोट कर रहा हूं, भारत का संविधान है, and all other matters relating to the functioning of the legislative assembly shall be regulated by law made by parliament। और इसी में 239 AA 7 है, A, Parliament may by law make provisions for giving effect to or supplementing the provisions contained in the foregoing clauses and for all matters incidental or consequential thereto। There is a delicate scheme for the Union Territory of Delhi, and the scheme is approved by the Parliament, by the Constitution of our country, to maintain a balance between the elected government, which has a very definite role here, but also keeping in mind the importance of the national capital. And it can't be said that if there is an elected government, it would destroy the spirit of the Constitution just to hide their own corruption. It would harass, it would threaten various government officers. आप प्रताड़ित करेंगे, डराएंगे, धमकाएंगे उन अफसरों को जो आपको रोकते हैं कि फाइलें चुरा के मत लेके जाओ शराब घोटाले की, जो अपना कार्य कर रहे हैं। जो आपको यह बता रहे हैं कि शीश महल में आपने घोटाला किया और आप आम आदमी पार्टी नहीं है, अपराध अराजक पार्टी है, अपराध अराजक पार्टी। और मैंने क्यों आपसे यह बात कही कि एक बार कम से कम संवैधानिक पीठ का वो फैसला पढ़ लिया होता, जिसके कुछ मुख्य बिंदु आपके समक्ष रख रहा हूं, शब्दशः कोट कर रहा हूं उस फैसले से। इस फैसले में बिल्कुल स्पष्ट लिखा है, इन द एब्सेंस ऑफ अ लॉ और प्रोविजन ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, द एग्जीक्यूटिव पावर ऑफ द लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर एक्टिंग ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ द यूनियन गवर्नमेंट shall extend only to matters related to the 3 entries, जो 3 entries दी हुई हैं, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर, पुलिस एंड लैंड। और उसके बाद जो अब पढ़ रहा हूं ये सबसे जरूरी है, however if parliament enacts a law granting executive power on any subject which is within the domain of NCTD, the executive power of the lieutenant governor shall be modified to the extent as provided in that law। और ऑर्डिनेंस इसलिए आया है क्योंकि अनुच्छेद 123 खुद ये कहता है कि अगर पार्लियामेंट सेशन में नहीं है तो आप ऑर्डिनेंस लाएंगे, वो कानून का काम करेगा, और जब पार्लियामेंट सेशन में होगी तो वो अध्यादेश पार्लियामेंट के समक्ष रखा जाएगा दोनों हाउसेस में। लेकिन ये अरविंद केजरीवाल को नहीं पता है। और एक और बात बताना चाहता हूं मैं उनको, जो निष्कर्ष इस फैसले में आया है अंत में, उसमें बिल्कुल स्पष्ट उन्होंने कहा है, The executive power of NCTD with respect to entries in list 2 and list 3 shall be subject to the executive power expressly conferred upon the union by the constitution or by a law enacted by parliament। मुख्य बिंदु क्या है? केंद्र सरकार के पास
Sachin, you tell me why is it assaulted? These are the people who physically assaulted me. Sir, he has been cooperating with the summons. Why have you arrested him in such fashion? Just to get out of this. Just to get out of this.
Mr. Charles, what lies ahead? The France will be safe for you.
Rahul, what do you have to say about the involvement of the shell companies, Rahul? Rahul, involvement of the shell companies, Rahul.
Was there an email that was sent to you from Shashi Tharoor asking for help? On
show me the mail.
He's asking for help, saying that forensic expert को भेजो ये, asking that the independent forensic report has to be sent to the Home Minister, to the Health Minister.
चलो उसके बारे में कोई भी भारत की परिभाषा से मतलब सहमत है।
Everybody has right to self-determine.
Mr. Stalin, what do you have to say on the recent death of Lance Naik Prabhu? Mr. Stalin, what do you have to say? Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these?
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions.
Right.
Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की। ठीक है, मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, आप पूछने दीजिए। मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, पूछने दीजिए। मैं पूछता हूँ, बेरोजगारी की बात पूछने दीजिए। राहुल।
With utmost respect to my colleague at the bar, I would like to say, no lawyer decides the validity and the constitutionality of any law, ordinance, or an act that is enacted in the parliament. I would only challenge Arvind Kejriwal. On Monday also the Honorable Supreme Court, because I am a foot soldier of the Honorable Supreme Court, is functioning. And he has made a very categorical statement that within 5 minutes, this ordinance will be struck down. I challenge Arvind Kejriwal that without wasting time, on Monday itself, he should file a petition and let the Honorable Supreme Court decide on the issue. Speaking for the Bharatiya Janata Party, there are well-founded reasons protecting the officers, ensuring that interest of the elected government, but at the same time, the interest of every common man who believes that the capital belongs to him or her also is protected, and whatever has been done within the constitutional framework and as per the observations made by the Honorable Supreme Court in the judgment that has been delivered. देखिए, ऐसा है कि वो क्या कुछ गिराएंगे जो खुद गिरे हुए हैं लोगों की नजरों में। मैं एक बात जरूर कहूंगा, ये जो सतही किसी चीज की समझ होती है, ये बहुत खतरनाक होती है। अरविंद केजरीवाल जी को किसी ने बोल दिया बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर। मैंने जो आपके समक्ष रखा आर्टिकल 1-239 के कई प्रोविजंस हैं सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजमेंट के, मैंने आपको पैराग्राफ्स बताए। अगर ये पढ़ लेते तो शायद ऐसी जो नर्सरी क्लास का छात्र होता है उसी की तरह अरविंद केजरीवाल बात करने लगे। और दुखद यह है कि एक मुख्यमंत्री को चाहिए कि वो संविधान का अध्ययन करे और जो सर्वोच्च न्यायालय के फैसला है, जो कानून है देश का, उसका अध्ययन करे। लेकिन वो लगे हुए हैं शराब घोटाले में, कैसे प्रमाण नष्ट किए जाएं। शीश महल में बताते हैं 10 लाख के पर्दे लगे हैं, लेकिन उनकी बेईमानी, उनका भ्रष्टाचार, उनकी अराजकता ये छुप नहीं पा रही 10 लाख के पर्दों से भी। एनी अदर क्वेश्चंस? थैंक यू।
So the BJP, they're launching a very scathing attack on Arvind Kejriwal, Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, who held a press conference a few minutes back, calling the ordinance brought in by the centre on the appointment and transfer of officers as unconstitutional. BJP alleging that the Delhi government misused the powers given to it by the Supreme Court, started harassing the officers under it, and even transferred some of the officers who did not toe line with the Aam Aadmi Party government. So these are the allegations and counter allegations as far as this ordinance is concerned. The ordinance that has been a very contentious topic in the last 24 hours or so, and has been a subject of political debate. We will keep a close watch and get responses from all sides on this big story on Republic TV.
Motorola, India's best 5G smartphone brand.
Congress leader Siddaramaiah took oath as Karnataka's Chief Minister in a swearing-in ceremony at the Kantirava Stadium in Bengaluru. DK Shivkumar has been sworn in as the Deputy Chief Minister of the state. Both Siddaramaiah and DK Shivkumar were administered oaths by Governor Thawarchand Gehlot. TMC National General Secretary Abhishek Banerjee was summoned by the CBI today. He is being questioned currently in the Kolkata office of the CBI in connection with the school job scam. Abhishek Banerjee has said that he will appeal against the investigation in the Supreme Court. This comes after Calcutta High Court had in fact upheld the investigation against him in the job scam. IRS officer and former zonal director of NCB Mumbai, Sameer Wankhede, appeared before the CBI for questioning over his alleged extortion in the alleged extortion case in the Arin Khan drugs case. He was earlier granted a protective bail by Bombay High Court on grounds of attending the summons. Congress-led UDF ghirawed the Thiruvananthapuram Secretariat on the second anniversary of the second term of LDF government in the state. With less than a week to go for the G20 tourism working group meetings in Jammu and Kashmir, PNIA and other security agencies have ramped up their preventive action against terror. Multiple NIA raids were reported in Kashmir. Alert: BSF troops intercepted another drone and shot it down in Punjab. The drone fell on the Pakistani side and could not be recovered. This is the third Pakistani drone that the BSF has intercepted in the last 2 days. We're heading into a break right now. After the break, we'll get you that political fight over the Delhi ordinance.
Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these?
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions.
Lies.
Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की. ठीक है, मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, आप पूछने दीजिए. मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ, पूछने दीजिए. मैं पूछता हूँ, बेरोजगारी की बात पूछने दीजिए. राहुल.
सर यू आर सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं. आज जनता जानना चाहती है सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं. आज जानना चाहती है जनता कि इतने लोगों की मौत हो गई है सर, लेकिन एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं. एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं. सर एफआईआर में सर आज राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री है. इतने लोगों की डेथ हो गई है सर, लेकिन कोई जवाब नहीं है सर. अब तक एक्शन को लेकर भी कुछ नहीं किए गए सर.
The army from Khorasan, which is from Afghanistan, will come before the end of time. They will attack India, and they will be the best among the mankind.
So basically, he wanted to attack India.
Basically.
So he said that to you.
In the biggest actions of the movements, we've killed 2,700 police officers and of various rank, chief minister, generals of the army. These are all targeted killings.
लालू जी, आपके शहाबुद्दीन से क्या रिश्ते हैं?
अरे तुम बराबर यही सवाल पूछते हो.
फोन पे आप बात करते हैं सर शहाबुद्दीन से?
अरे यार फालतू करता. गिरोगे यार. अरे छोड़ो.
होती है जेल में.
कैसे बात होगी जेल से?
टेप आए थे टेप चला.
तुम्हारे पास होगा टेप?
टेप है, वो चलाया भी.
चलाते रहो, हरि का भजन गाते रहो.
पत्रकारों को आपने गालियां.
बहुत बदतमीज है तुम्हारा रिपोर्ट.
आपने भी तो उनसे बदतमीजी करी.
फिर वही जवाब बोल रहा है. दे देंगे दुम का नाच के गिर जाओगे.
लालू जी,
आज टीवी बने हुए लोगों को अपील किया है कि आज टीवी का बाइकाट करो. ये भारत के लोगों की जीत है. वंदे वंदे. समझ में नहीं आ रहा। ये देखिए आप, पूरा का पूरा टूट चुका है।
We have to leave from here. Due to the security reasons, we perhaps may not be able to reveal the location of the bunker where we were just a while back. These are the images which shows you the reality of what really happened in the city of Bucha. What you see right now on your screens is the reality of this war where thousands and thousands of Ukrainians have lost their lives. We are standing in the premise of a church right in the middle of Bucha, where we have seen bodies after bodies were being dumped inside these graveyards.
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know, those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.
सर यू आर सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं, आज जनता जानना चाहती है सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं, आज जानना चाहती है जनता कि इतने लोगों की मौत हो गई है सर, लेकिन एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं है। सर एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं है। सर एफआईआर में सर आज राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री है, इतने लोगों की डेथ हो गई है सर, लेकिन कोई जवाब नहीं है सर। अब तक एक्शन को लेकर भी कुछ नहीं किया गया सर।
He has been cooperating with the summons. Why have you arrested him in such a fashion? He has been interrogated for over 100 hours, sir.
First to get out of this.
If you don't
First to get out of this. First to get out of this. Get out of this. First to get out of this. First to get out of this. First to get out of this.
He has cooperated.
Get out of this.
He has cooperated.
Get out of this.
Get out of this. Cooperating, sir.
Get out of
this.
this.
I'm merely asking you. He has been cooperating.
Get out of this.
We are also cooperating. We are also cooperating.
Yeah, please cooperate.
Mr. Singh, you fabricated evidences against Republic TV. ED has given clean chit to Republic TV. Now India today is under the scanner of Enforcement Directorate, Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh, who was there in this conspiracy with you? Who were your political bosses?
विदांगनाएं रो रही है, थोड़ा उसके बारे में भी सोच लीजिए सर।
बिल्कुल सोचना चाहिए।
उनसे एक बार मिल तो लो सर। मिल तो लो सर।
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know, those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches.
We can do it. It is simple work.
conversation.
From the G7 summit as Prime Minister's diplomacy is on display. In this latest bilateral, those are pictures of Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Remember, this is the first in-person meeting between the two leaders ever since the Russia-Ukraine conflict broke out. Earlier, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had also held bilaterals with his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida. He had also unveiled a bust of Mahatma Gandhi in Hiroshima. And remember, he is slated to be in Hiroshima till the 21st. Those are the latest pictures that we are just playing out for our viewers from Hiroshima, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is at the G7 summit. Remember, G7 leaders are expected to strongly condemn Russia's war on Ukraine while pledging their continuing support for Ukraine. But for the moment, Senior Executive Editor Abhishek Kapoor is with us on the phone line. Abhishek, important to understand what was discussed between Narendra Modi and Volodymyr Zelensky amid all the talk of India holding a very neutral position.
Well, India has indeed held a neutral position. So, Aisha, remember, buying oil from Russia is not a lack of neutrality because the oil is getting shipped in substantial quantities to Europe as well, and they are more than happy. What is important is that they are more than happy that this is taking care of some part of their energy security and energy crisis. But what is important is that India has taken a very principled position that any war in this era is not practical, not feasible, is detrimental to global peace, prosperity, growth, and this is essentially not a time for indulging in war. The principal position is reflected in our conduct, keeping a very non-aligned like China, which has completely backed Russia, and the West, which has completely backed Ukraine. And the G7 leaders' communique is also a little discouraging on the fact that they are still wanting to dig in their heels and continue with the war, and that's really not a way out. And in that backdrop, India's position against salience, Prime Minister Modi meeting Zelensky. Remember, Prime Minister, since the war broke out, has met President Putin twice, once in Samarkand on the sidelines of the SCO summit last year, and second time when President Putin came for the annual India-Russia summit. He was here briefly, and two leaders met in Delhi. But there was no physical meeting with Zelensky. So in that sense, this sort of evens it out. And for the Prime Minister to hear firsthand what has happened in Ukraine, what kind of death and destruction has played out, and how every side has really played their cards and what more needs to be done. So I think significant conversation there. The detail, and remember, Prime Minister in that opening comments, what he said, I am giving my personal word that whatever needs to be done, we will be doing it.
Yes.
India doing it, and Prime Minister Modi personally getting involved. So I think that was the most direct offer of mediation coming in from Prime Minister Modi. How things go forward from here depends on how the Ukrainians respond to it, and everyone will be watching that.
All right, Abhishek, let's also take more opinions on that approach from our guest who is joining us now live on the broadcast. We have Jitendra Kumar Ojha, who's a geopolitical and national security expert. He's joining us from Delhi. Mr. Ojha, your view on how Mr. Modi has dealt with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and most importantly in this meeting with Zelensky.
India has a lot of credibility compared to most other countries. As your editor himself was saying, that West has taken a very strong position that they will continue to fight this war. And we are averse to any form of war. We have always been, India has always been advocating some kind of peaceful means to address whatever differences there are. And we're also conscious of what will be larger implications of this war. We already know that people are suffering, cost of essentials have risen high. But at the same time, if you see geopolitical equilibriums, these will be shifting quite significantly to the detriment of India as well as the West. There have been sections of people in American strategic community who have always said that India should be given due space to manage its relationship with Russia at one level, and also, if required, to work out some kind of workable understanding between the United States and Russia. But that's something which has gone into past, and there's not much of a talk. But I believe that with Prime Minister Modi's credibility, our objective should be to bring an end to this war, or at least bring in some kind of ceasefire. And to that extent, West is not prepared. They are continuing with their supplies of weapons to Ukraine. And these weapons are neither going to win the war nor going to pursue peace. So in this situation, I feel Prime Minister Modi is the only global leader who is in a position to rather pursue some kind of breakthrough. If that happens, I'm sure this will be welcomed. This should be welcomed by Ukrainians also, because Ukraine should not be going for, death and destruction, as you yourself have mentioned. Our objective should be to preserve peace and protect people. To that extent, I feel that Prime Minister Modi's response has been quite encouraging, and all peace-loving people all over the world should welcome it.
And, Mr. Ocha, India has never ever backed out when it has come to humanitarian aid, and be it anyone across the globe who has always approached India for help on that front. Similarly, how Zelensky also thanked Mr. Modi.
Absolutely.
But before we talk more on this, Mr. Ocha, we are staying with these pictures of Prime Minister meeting with all his counterparts of the Quad on the sidelines of the G7 summit. US, India, Australia and Japan. Prime Minister meeting with his counterparts ahead of the Quad summit on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Those are the latest pictures that we just have. We'll also try and get Abhishek to get more details on what may have been discussed between the leaders and what exactly do we know from the Indian side. But those pictures really doing all the talking, as those are the Quad leaders on our screens right now, meeting on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Mr. Ocha, if I can come back to you on these particular pictures that we are staying with right now, because this really is a precursor to how the four leaders are to meet and to discuss the important issues during the Quad summit. This, of course, is a meeting on the sidelines of the G7 summit, but the message that it really puts out.
Definitely. It shows commitment of all these four countries to pursue Quad. And Quad has come up, it was initially TSD, Trilateral Security Dialogue, and India was co-opted, and Japan was very clear that without India, it will be difficult, to secure this region from Chinese expansionism. And last few years, if you see, Chinese naval presence has increased multiple times. They have taken over in terms of sheer size. They've taken over even United States. And a very unique model they have developed. By that model, they are having lots of...
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm very honoured to be convening the third in-person Quad Leaders Summit here in Hiroshima. And I want to thank particularly Fumio, but also President Biden and Prime Minister Modi as well, for showing how we are indeed an outcomes-focused grouping that can get things done and can be flexible to make sure that we achieve these outcomes. It's an example of our resolve. And also, I think a clear statement of how important we regard the Quad as being an essential component. My first act 1 year ago tomorrow indeed was after being sworn in as Prime Minister was to fly to Tokyo to represent Australia in Japan at the second Quad Leaders Summit. And I will never forget the very warm and generous welcome that I had after my election. I can't think of any better way to begin a Prime Ministership than a gathering of such important friends from our region. 1 year on, I'm absolutely delighted to be amongst close friends again here in Japan to continue our important work, standing together for an open, stable, secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. A region where sovereignty is respected and all countries, large and small, benefit from a regional balance that keeps the peace. Respect for the leadership of regional institutions, including ASEAN, the Pacific Island Forum and the Indian Ocean Rim Association, is central to our approach. And our vision statement that we will release tonight sets out the principles for our engagement in the region. Through the Quad's positive, practical agenda, we are taking action to address shared challenges. Together, we are leveraging our collective strengths and offering support to the region, which will be enhanced by the outcomes that we hope to agree on tonight. So thank you everyone for gathering, and I will now hand to Prime Minister Modi for his opening comments.
Your Excellencies, Prime Minister Albanese, Prime Minister Kishida, and President Biden, I am very pleased to be taking part in this Quad Summit today and to be among friends. Established itself as an important platform for peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. There is no doubt at all about the fact that the Indo-Pacific region is the engine for global trade, innovation, and development. We agree that the security and success of the Indo-Pacific is important not just for this region but for the entire world. We are moving forward with a constructive agenda based on shared democratic values. Through our shared efforts, we are giving a practical dimension to our vision for a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Climate action, disaster management, strategic technologies, reliable supply chains, health security, maritime security, counterterrorism are examples of areas in which our positive cooperation is increasing. Today, several countries and groups are announcing their Indo-Pacific strategy and vision. During our meeting today, we will have the opportunity to discuss subjects related to the inclusive and people-centric development of this entire region. I believe that Quad will continue to work for global good, for the welfare of mankind, and for peace and prosperity. I commend and congratulate Prime Minister Albanese for successfully chairing this summit. We will be pleased to host the Quad Leader Summit in India in 2024. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Prime Minister Modi. I now turn to Prime Minister Kishida.
Thank you, Anthony. The chair mentioned that 1 year has passed since our summit in Tokyo. During this 1 year period, Russia's outrage has continued and the security environment has become even more severe. Free and open international order based on the rule of law is under threat. All the more so because we live under such harsh situation, it is meaningful that we get together to demonstrate to the world once again the solidarity of the Quad and our strong commitment to our common vision towards a free and open Indo-Pacific, FOIP, that we would like to drive the world towards an international community of cooperation and not of division and confrontation. Without striding together with regional countries, FOIP cannot be attained. We will listen to the voices of regional countries of the ASEAN, South Asia, and Pacific Island states to engage in practical cooperation which delivers true benefits to the region as a force for good. I hope today's discussion will give us another momentum to further spur our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद प्रधानमंत्री जी और अब मैं राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन को आमंत्रित करता हूं.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for accommodating the change of location, particularly you, Mr. Prime Minister. Prime Minister Albanese, especially for your impressive leadership of the Quad this year and your gracious flexibility in holding the meeting here again in Japan. While our setting today is different than our mission remains the same, and that is to advance our vision of a free, open, secure, and prosperous Indo-Pacific, and to demonstrate the capacity of democracies to deliver on in a shared region. I think people are going to look back at this, the Quad, and God willing, 10, 20, 30 years from now and say it changed the dynamic not only of the region but the world. And while the setting today is different, in our last 2 years, we made enormous progress, in my view. We're now launching a new initiatives to keep that progress going, from projects to build secure telecommunications in the Pacific region, to strengthen our cooperation in submarine cables, new joint efforts between our private sectors to invest in infrastructure and clean energy projects in the region. And I'm also proud of the work we've done with our partners of the ASEAN and Pacific Islands. Matter of fact, I was with one of our counterparts today at the larger meeting, and he's part of the ASEAN countries, and he said, "I think the Quad is a very good idea." Remember, in the beginning, it was how it was going to be greeted, and so I feel good. I think a great deal of the future of our world is going to be written here in the Indo-Pacific. And together, I think we're going to continue to ensure that the future provides more opportunity, prosperity, and stability than anything else. So I want to thank you again for your strong partnership and friendship. And I apologize again for the change in plans, but thank you for accommodating this. And I look forward to our conversations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will now move to a close.
और अब मैं
Mr. President, are you concerned about China's use of economic coercion against countries it does not like? Mr. President, are you concerned about China's use of arbitrary economic coercion against countries it does not like?
They've run out of please.
Thank you, Press.
So those are the pictures of the Quad leaders meeting on the sidelines of the G7 summit, where Prime Minister Modi said that India is very pleased to be taking part in the Quad summit and also would like to host the Quad leaders summit in 2024. Also fulfilling the commitment towards the Quad, as he maintained that Quad will continue to work for global good. Meanwhile, Joe Biden also saying that the ultimate vision is for a free and open Indo-Pacific, and how the US is also now launching new projects for the future. I'd like to go back to Mr. Ojha on this, but before that, let's once again listen in to what Prime Minister Modi had said as the Quad leaders met on the sidelines of the G7 summit.
मैरिटाइम सिक्योरिटी, काउंटर टेररिज्म जैसे महत्वपूर्ण क्षेत्रों में हमारा सकारात्मक सहयोग बढ़ रहा है। कई देश और समूह अपनी इंडो पैसिफिक रणनीति और विजन की घोषणा कर रहे हैं। आज की हमारी बैठक में इस पूरे क्षेत्र के समावेशी और पीपल सेंट्रिक विकास के जुड़े विषयों पर चर्चा करने का अवसर मिलेगा। मेरा मानना है कि क्वाड वैश्विक भलाई, मानव कल्याण, शांति और समृद्धि के लिए निरंतर प्रयत्न करता रहेगा। प्रधानमंत्री अल्बनीजी को इस समिट की सफल अध्यक्षता के लिए अभिनंदन और बधाई देता हूं। 2024 में क्वाड लीडर समिट का आयोजन भारत में करने में हमें खुशी होगी। प्रधानमंत्री अल्बनीजी,
Prime Minister Albanese.
प्रधानमंत्री
All right, Jitendra Kumar Ojha, who continues to be with us. Mr. Ojha, if I can come back to you, and I believe that was also a question that a lot of journalists wanted to ask the Quad members, because while at one end, all the Quad members have denied any hostile intentions towards Beijing and stressing time and again that they are not a military alliance, China is spooked, as China does describe the group as an attempt to encircle it. Your view on it?
Fact is that, Chinese model that we're talking about, that model rests on, capturing markets in some of these smaller countries in the Indian Ocean region, right from Africa to Far East, if you see. And what this is doing, that it is propping up various kinds of autocrats. So it is taking a lot of resources of these countries and at the same time getting some kind of monopolistic access to their markets. So it's a kind of neocolonialism. And I know that Quad members would be very careful at level of state. They would not like to say anything. But yes, it's not a military alliance as such. But, in this era, making so much of investments on building military assets, and particularly naval assets, if you see, using several kinds of these ports, which are dual-use ports. They do not have commercial value. For example, Hambantota port you talk about, it will never be commercially sustainable, even sections of BRI. So there are very grand plans and grand vision by Xi Jinping, and what he is thinking of, re-establishing some kind of Chinese empire where rest of the states are converted into vassal states. It's also, if you notice, that both not only in South China Sea, but even in Indian Ocean, there's a lot of research and survey, and not only that, a lot of exploitation of marine resources in this part of the world for monopolistic benefits of people of China, Nine Dash Line, etc. We all know that how they have expanded their territory. So the whole thing threatens, as these leaders pointed out, open Indo-Pacific. Even free passage has been a difficulty in South China Sea particularly. And Indian Ocean also, their presence has increased manifold. And at one level, if you see, they are trying to get these commodities, etc. And the whole thing is negatively impacting prospects of growth and progress of these countries. So we've had this Quad dialogue, but besides this, we also had Quad Plus dialogue, where Vietnam and South Korea and others were also brought in. So this is a very broad kind of dialogue, not a military formation, not a military alliance at all. It does not threaten anyone. But yes, it is one way of asserting, as they say, open Indo-Pacific, where, countries on Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, they can collectively work together. They can shape their destiny they will not be subjected to this kind of neocolonialism where Chinese exploit their resources at a throwaway prices. They get the resources, they prop up these autocrats, and so much of investment they are making only to intimidate, I would say, some of the smaller states and change this global order where they dominate and rest are pushed into some kind of subservience. So I would say this is a very positive, everybody would know, but rather people in democracies, those who are watching this, saying this is one way of asserting freedom and independence of these countries, protecting their sovereignty, and building a framework where all the countries in this region, they can collectively work together and they can progress together. This is what I would say.
But, Mr. Oja, even as we are addressing the elephant in the room, let's also understand how the leaders of the group of 7 economies are united in voicing their concerns about China. But fact is that how do you really translate that into action? Because at one end, they understand that they need China's cooperation when it comes to larger global issues. But at the same time, it is also a concern against Beijing.
Absolutely. The Beijing's political model itself is very non-transparent and opaque. And many people like us who are in developing countries or post-colonial democracies like India, we believe it's sheer outcome of capitalist greed of America. It's American capitalist greed which has given so much of leeway to Beijing. They were able to convert a large component of their population into working machine. A lot of subsidies they provided. And of course, they have come to a level where the world will find it very difficult to dealing from China economically. And not only that, they have also been sleeping. Sometimes if you see these American think tanks only, they have been saying the kind of military investment China has been making. Some of these cutting edge technologies where they have invested, and not only invested, they have gone ahead of United States also. They have capacity to dazzle American satellites and blind them virtually. So their defensive capacities are very strong at one level. They are in a position to hit most of American bases by their hypersonic weapon system. And not only that, in several areas, naval capacities we have already mentioned, and especially their ISR, information, reconnaissance and surveillance capacities. These are unparalleled. In certain areas, they are posed ahead of even United States. So with this kind of developments in the Chinese, on the part of Chinese, the concern on the part of West is very genuine. But I would suppose that apart from this kind of interactions, democracies will have to rediscover their strength, and democracies will have to optimize their governance and security capacity at one level, and then provide an alternative model to countries in the Central Asia, to Far East, to Africa, and all these countries, so that they get a little better model, better choices, and they are not dependent entirely upon China, and they are not vulnerable to Chinese system where they are selling surveillance system to autocrats so that they can control their own countries and they can act as vassal state of China. And that way, I would say aspirations and hopes and hope for a good future for these countries in this region, that is getting badly impacted by this Chinese hegemonic and imperial agenda, I would say. I conclude.
Absolutely, Mr. Ocha. And even as the Quad leaders continue to reiterate that they remain committed towards a free and open Indo-Pacific, and also when it comes to strategic assessments that they come together on, let's once again listen in to what the leaders had to say as they met on the sidelines of the G7 summit.
Strategic technologies, reliable supply chain, health security, maritime security, काउंटर टेररिज्म जैसे महत्वपूर्ण क्षेत्रों में हमारा सकारात्मक सहयोग बढ़ रहा है। कई देश और समूह अपनी इंडो पैसिफिक रणनीति और विजन की घोषणा कर रहे हैं। आज की हमारी बैठक में इस पूरे क्षेत्र के समावेशी और पीपल सेंट्रिक विकास के जुड़े विषयों पर चर्चा करने का अवसर मिलेगा। मेरा मानना है कि क्वाड वैश्विक भलाई, मानव कल्याण, शांति और समृद्धि के लिए निरंतर प्रयत्न करता रहेगा। प्रधानमंत्री अल्बनीजी को इस समिट की सफल अध्यक्षता के लिए अभिनंदन और बधाई देता हूं। 2024 में क्वाड लीडर समिट का आयोजन भारत में करने में हमें खुशी होगी।
Well, gentlemen, thank you for accommodating the change of location, particularly you, Mr. Prime Minister. Prime Minister Albanese, especially for your impressive leadership of the Quad this year and your gracious flexibility in holding the meeting here again in Japan. While our setting today is different, than our mission remains the same. And that is to advance our vision of a free, open, secure, and prosperous Indo-Pacific, and to demonstrate the capacity of democracies to deliver on in a shared region. I think people are going to look back at this, the Quad, and God willing, 10, 20, 30 years from now, and say it changed the dynamic not only of the region but the world. And while the setting today is different, in our last 2 years we made enormous progress, in my view. We're now launching a new initiatives to keep that progress going, from projects to build secure telecommunications in the Pacific region, to strengthen our cooperation in submarine cables, new joint efforts between our private sectors to invest in infrastructure and clean energy projects in the region. And I'm also proud of the work we've done with our partners of the ASEAN and Pacific Islands. Matter of fact, I was with one of our counterparts today at the larger meeting, and he's part of the ASEAN countries, and he said, I think the Quad is a very good idea. Remember in the beginning, it was how it was going to be greeted, and so I feel good. I think a great deal of the future of our world is going to be written here in the Indo-Pacific. And together, I think we're going to continue to ensure that the future provides more opportunity, prosperity, and stability than anything else. So I want to thank you again for your strong partnership and friendship, and I apologize again for the change in plans, but thank you for accommodating this, and I look forward to our conversations tonight.
And on that note, we have to slip into a very short commercial break. But on the other side, we get you all the details of what is emerging in Hiroshima as G7 summit is underway.
These are the people that physically assault
Sir, he has been cooperating with the summons. Why have you arrested him in such fashion?
Just to get out of this. Just to get out of this.
Mr. Charles, what lies ahead? What to say for you?
Rahul, what do you have to say about the involvement of the shell companies, Rahul? Rahul, involvement of the shell companies, Rahul.
Was there an email that was sent to you from Shashi Tharoor asking for help?
Show me the mail.
He's asking for help, saying that forensic expert ko bhejo ye, asking that the independent forensic report has to be sent to the Home Minister, to the Health Minister.
चलो उसके बारे में कोई भी चर्चा है भारत की परिभाषा से मतलब सहमत है
Everybody has right to self-determine.
Mr. Stalin, what do you have to say on the recent death of Lance Naik Prabhu? Mr. Stalin, what do you have to say? Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these?
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around.
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.
Significant development in the LG versus Delhi government tussle. LG sources have now given out details of harassment. Nearly 8 instances of alleged harassment that have come to light, where Republic has accessed a letter from an IAS officer to the Chief Secretary saying that Minister Saurabh Bhardwaj, who did not pay any heed to his submission and went on shouting in an extremely aggressive and intimidating tone and posture. It's a big development as the tussle between the Delhi government continues with the LG office. Sources within the LG office have put out details of harassment by ministers in the Delhi government, where they've gone on to say that Minister Saurabh Bhardwaj had not paid any heed to the submission of an IAS officer to the Chief Secretary and went on shouting in an extremely aggressive and intimidating tone and posture. Republic has also accessed this letter. My colleague Alisha will join us shortly to give us more details and the operational points mentioned in this letter. But 8 instances, all in all, as we are learning, of alleged harassment that have come to light. It is a significant development as the tussle continues, and sources in the LG office have given out details of harassment, as is the claim they are making. Alisha is joining us from the Mumbai newsroom as she has a copy of this letter. Alisha, take us through the details of it and what all it states, as this is a big charge against the ministers in the Aam Aadmi Party government in the national capital, where they are alleging harassment.
Well, yes, Suesha. Republic has accessed a letter of an IAS officer which was written to the Chief Secretary, and he has clearly mentioned the behavior of a Cabinet Minister, Delhi Cabinet Minister Saurabh Bhardwaj. So I would like to read of the important points which is being mentioned in the letter, as it mentioned that the letter which was written, this letter was given on 16th May 2023, and it is clearly mentioned that today I was informed by my personal staff that has been called by Saurabh Bhardwaj, Honorable Minister, to his chamber on 7th floor of the Delhi Secretariat. I immediately went to the chamber upon meeting the Honorable Minister. He said that he had asked for all files pertaining to early years decision, but files relating to the period subsequent to April 22 had not reached him so far. So he also mentioned that he was informed that I have already been informed the concerned officer of the service department to provide all the files to the office of the Honorable Minister. But what is here to mention, because there are important points that has been mentioned, the behavior specifically of an minister, Delhi minister, clearly stating that I requested the Honorable Minister that I may be allowed to go so that I can resume preparing the second of records of proceeding of the CSB meeting. which was held today at 10:30 a.m. He retorted by saying that क्या proceeding बना रहे हो, कागज ही काले करने हैं तुमको, you have wasted all the time since 11th of May 2023 and you have absconded from your duty and deliberately you're not following the directions of the elected government. Where he also mentioned that, he also said to the minister that, sir, we are following the instructions and in fact I have already instructed the concerned officer of the service department to provide all the details. But what is the minister has been doing? He clearly been intimidating is what been mentioned here. It has been said clearly by an IAS officer, but the Honorable Minister did not heed to my submission and went on shouting in an extremely aggressive and intimidating tone and posture. Not only this, but he also stated that thereafter he ordered Mr. Kenny Singh, who is a special secretary, also to sign the same statement and put on the date. Also, Kenny Singh was reluctant to sign the statement. But what Honorable Minister got up from his chair and brought the paper in front of me, kept it on the table and asked me to sign the same by coming face to face, bending over me. He was looming over me in a very physical, aggressive way and I could not get up from my seat. It was as if he was going to physically assault me at any moment. I would like to repeat the statement as what mentioned by an IAS officer. He was looming over me in very physically aggressive way and I could not get up from my seat. It was as he was going to physically assault me at any moment. I humbly told the Honorable Minister that I am not the custodian of the record. The file records of the office remains in the custody of concerned branch head like Deputy Secretary. So here is the IAS officer who has written a letter to the Chief Secretary clearly showing the behavior of an Honorable Minister, that is Saurabh Bhardwaj, how he was physically harassed, how he was mentally pressured just for the sake of files, the files which was asked by Saurabh Bhardwaj. But this is the letter that has been given by an IAS officer, Ashish More, who stated that rather the fact asking for documents or files, but here Saurabh Bhardwaj, who was forcefully, he was intimidating the officer where he could not even get up from his chair when he has requested that he need to go to his cabin so that he can get some concern letters and the paper related to this request that has been made by the minister. But rather than allowing him to do his duty, to continue with his duty, but here the minister who intimidated the officer and he could not even get up from his chair because for an officer who is saying that he felt like he is going to get a physical assault from the Saurabh Bhardwaj, who is the cabinet minister of Delhi.
You know, Alicia, in the backdrop of the ordinance passed by the centre and the centre moving review plea in the Supreme Court over control of services verdict, this may just be another angle that will really add when it comes to the centre and how they are putting up their case when it comes to the review plea in the top court, but especially bureaucrats taking their particular cases of harassment and now bringing it to light adds another dimension to it. Alicia, for the moment, I want to thank you for joining us. We also have more responses to this. Let's listen in.
तो दिल्ली में काम करने वाले अफसरों के निर्णय के बारे में एक पारदर्शी और उत्तरदायी प्रक्रिया के लिए ये ऑर्डिनेंस लाया गया है.
Not only is this a contempt of Supreme Court, it is absolutely an unconstitutional ordinance because a power that is given by the Constitution cannot be taken away by a notification or by an ordinance or even by a law.
कोर्ट का निर्णय आया था, उस निर्णय को पढ़ लेते, समझ लेते, उसके अनुरूप कार्य करते. मुझे ये बता दें केजरीवाल, रात को 3 बजे ताले तोड़ के फाइल कॉपी करने की क्या जरूरत थी? जैसे ही निर्णय आया उससे
आप बता दीजिए क्या कारण?
अपनी चोरी छुपा रहे हैं, अपना भ्रष्टाचार छुपा रहे हैं. उनको पता है कि जो अफसर उनके खिलाफ जांच कर रहा है उसी अफसर को हटाने की मांग कर रहे हैं.
Of the center to bring the ordinance on this, when I say that there is reason behind this, the Constitution says and Constitution clearly said कि the authority is Lieutenant Governor, and the act of Arvind Kejriwal government is like that you are above the Constitution and you're behaving like that. न खाता न बही, जो केजरीवाल कहीं वही सही, that is Hindi phrase on that.
ये अध्यादेश माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट के फैसले के अनुसार ही है. जब उन्होंने फैसला दिया था तभी कहा था कि ये सर्विसेज की ट्रांसफर पोस्टिंग कैसे होगा इसके नियम की स्पष्टता के लिए केंद्र कानून ला सकता है और केंद्र कानून ला दिया।
And a quick check of the other top stories we are tracking on Saturday. Congress leader Siddaramaiah took oath as Karnataka's chief minister in a swearing-in ceremony at the Kantirava Stadium in Bengaluru. With this, the Congress leader has become the 24th chief minister of the state. Karnataka Pradesh Congress Committee Chief D.K. Shivkumar also took an oath as Deputy Chief Minister. Both the leaders were administered oaths by Governor Thawarchand Gehlot at the Kantirava Stadium in Bengaluru. TMC leader Abhishek Banerjee was summoned to appear before the CBI at its Kolkata office on Saturday as part of the agency's probe into the School for Jobs scam. Banerjee, who was on the campaign trail in Bankura, had said that he was rushing back to Kolkata to answer the summons sent by the Central Investigative Agency and led the CBI to arrest him. Following summons by the CBI to appear before its Kolkata office, TMC National General Secretary and MP Abhishek Banerjee wrote to the agency informing that he's moved Supreme Court for an urgent hearing challenging the Calcutta High Court order to quiz him in regard to Kuntal Ghosh letter case. IRS officer and former zonal director of NCB Mumbai, Sameer Wankhede, appeared before the CBI for questioning over his alleged extortion in the Aryan Khan drugs case. He was earlier granted protective bail by the Bombay High Court on grounds of attending said summons. Congress-led Union Democratic Front carried out the Thiruvananthapuram Secretariat amid the CPIM and its second anniversary of governance under Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan, alleging misgovernance, violence, corruption and inflation faced by the public. UDF workers staged protests around the Secretariat premises, leading to traffic disruption in various parts of the state capital. With less than a week to go before the G20 Tourism Working Group meetings in Jammu and Kashmir, NIA and other security agencies have ramped up their preventive action against terror. Multiple NIA raids were reported from the hinterland. Alert: BSF troops intercepted another drone and shot it down in Punjab. The drone fell on the Pakistani side and could not be recovered. This is the third Pakistani drone that the BSF has intercepted in the last 2 days. Pakistan has notoriously been using drones to smuggle drugs into Punjab and other regions along the border. Only a few days ahead of the G20 Tourism Working Group meetings in Kashmir, Indian Army gunned down a terrorist in the Poonch sector. Arms, ammunition, narcotics were all recovered in this operation. A massive fire broke out at a scrap warehouse facility in Rajnagar area of UP's Ghaziabad. Fire tenders were pressed into service. Fire service issued a statement saying that they doused the flames and no injuries or casualties occurred.
Motorola, India's best 5G smartphone brand.
Meanwhile, CBI questioned former Mumbai NCB chief Sameer Wankhede for more than 5 hours in a case in which he is accused of demanding 25 crore rupees of bribe from Shah Rukh Khan for not implicating his son Aryan in the Cordelia cruise drug bust case. Wankhede reached CBI office in Bandra Kurla complex around 10:15 this morning. He was quizzed for about 7 hours, after which he walked out of the CBI office. With that, we step into a short commercial break. On the other side, we get you details of the bilateral meetings and several engagements that are underway for Prime Minister Modi on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Meeting with his Japanese counterpart, bonhomie with Biden, India's diplomacy on display in Hiroshima.
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know, those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.
Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Why these?
Republic TV can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की ठीक है मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ आप पूछने दीजिए मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ पूछने दीजिए मैं पूछता हूँ बेरोजगारी की बात पूछने दीजिए राहुल
सर यू आर द सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं आज जनता जानना चाहती है सर आप गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हैं आज जानना चाहती है जनता कि इतने लोगों की मौत हो गई है सर लेकिन एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं सर एफआईआर में किसी का नाम नहीं सर एफआईआर में सर आज राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री है इतने लोगों की डेथ हो गई है सर लेकिन कोई जवाब नहीं है सर अब तक एक्शन को लेकर भी कुछ नहीं किया गया सर
The army from Khorasan, which is from Afghanistan, will come before the end of time, will attack India, and they will be the best among the mankind.
So basically he wanted to attack India.
Basically.
So he said that to you.
The biggest actions of the movements, we've killed 2,700 police officers and of various rank, chief minister, generals of the army. These are all targeted.
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know, those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's best 5G smartphone brand, brings you the latest breaking news update from across the country only on Republic TV.
We can ask any number of questions. I'm not going to be...
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of institutions. Sir, he raised the issue of institutions. When the ED goes after you, these protests don't happen.
Obviously, you don't understand English. What can I...
I understand English, sir. Rahul, would you take a couple of questions on ED, Rahul? You can't push us around. मैं किसान की बात करना गरीबों की ठीक है मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ आप पूछने दीजिए मैं किसान की पूछता हूँ पूछने दीजिए मैं पूछता हूँ बेरोजगारी की बात पूछने दीजिए राहुल Mr.
Singh, you fabricated evidences against Republic TV. ED has given clean chit to Republic TV. Now India today is under the scanner of Enforcement Directorate, Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh, who was there in this conspiracy with you? Who were your political bosses?
You're one guy alone in the boat. I'm just thinking, you know, those dark nights when you were alone. You were alone in that boat, right?
Yes, I mean,
There's nobody but you in the boat.
Yes, exactly.
And the elements.
Yes.
Let me understand this. How are you not afraid?
It was not scary at all. The thing is, it's all about how well you can control your mind. I'm very happy being alone. I can spend even longer time at sea, meditate at sea. So that's good for my emotional, health. And no sat phone, no GPS, no electronic watches, no satellite internet, no weather data coming through internet, nothing. It's just sun, moon, stars, and HF radio.